The night opens like a curtain, slow and smooth, and the sky is the stage. Stars hold their places in a quiet pattern you have seen before. Then, with the grace of a brushstroke, a soft glow slides along the darkness. It is not loud. It is not fast. It does not blink like a plane or burn like a falling ember. It simply drifts, steady and calm, an ancient traveler crossing the whisper of stars. Telescopes wake in distant hills. Domes roll open. Cold air slips across mirrors that have learned the patience of stone. The first images are faint, only a pale thread against black, but the sensors do not tire. Pixel by pixel, starlight becomes data. Data becomes shape. A point that is not a star begins to move between reference frames, inch by careful inch. Astronomers lean closer. They track, subtract, and measure again. The numbers settle into a story, a new object, passing through the neighborhood of the sun. They call it 3 IATLAs. The name is quiet, even plain, yet it hums with meaning. Interstellar, the whisper runs through the room. Not bound to the sun, not from here. An object built in some far workshop of gravity, carried by a deep current through the lanes between stars. It does not shout its plans. It does not hurry. It simply keeps coming, like a tide that has been traveling for centuries. In the control room, monitors glow a gentle blue. There is the predicted orbit, a silver line wrapped around a map of our planets. There is the current position, the small point, a drifting shadow, threading the darkness with a calm purpose that feels older than our language for it. Someone speaks softly about perihelion, the close brush with sunlight that will make its hidden skin breathe. Another runs a check on non-gravitational forces, those tiny pushes from vapor and dust. The words are simple, but the night feels large. If you're listening as you drift towards sleep, this is a moment to join the watch. Share the time and place where you are, midnight in Karachi, dawn in London. A late lunch in Sydney like stars, brightening the rim of Earth. Subscribe if you want these sky lullabies to find you again, and let your message float into the feed. I read them like constellations, and somewhere in the pattern, our small lights meet. Outside, frost gathers on handrails. The telescopes murmur as they turn. Across the ocean, another observatory confirms the motion. A third finds the same faint line. The object's path is not circular. It is a long, open arc, a hyperbola more escape than embrace. That shape says this traveler is not captured by the sun. It is dropped into our system to touch a point and move on, like a swan skimming a lake, leaving only a rippling memory behind. The voice in your ear stays calm. Orbit, it says, and you picture a quiet track laid down by math. Perihelion, and you feel warmth where the path comes closest to the sun, the place where ice will turn to mist. Inclination, and the line tilts in your mind, slipping over the plane where planets keep their dance. These are not hard words. They are keys that turn slowly, opening a door to how the sky works while you breathe and listen. Astronomers do not rush. They build certainty with gentle steps. Night after night, they measure against background stars, like checking the slow drift of a raft across a wide sea. They correct for Earth's own motion, for the push of sunlight, for the tiny nudge a jets of gas might give. They speak of confidence intervals the way builders speak of beams. When a pattern holds, they nod and write it down. But even their certainty has a song in it. You can hear the music when they talk about interstellar space, that long road the object has traveled. Beyond our bright planets lies a sphere of comets, a loose cloud the sun keeps as a memory of its birth. Beyond that, the distances swell. The darkness is not empty. It is thick with dust and cold atoms, with the silent wake of ancient stars. Somewhere out there, the traveler began. There is comfort in that thought, like finding a footprint on a quiet path. There is also wonder, because the path itself reaches farther than our minds can walk in one night. As the hours pass, the glow grows a little stronger. A coma, the thin, round haze of a comet's breath, may start to appear, like frost forming around a whisper. If the surface warms, jets might sigh into space. Dust could drift into a tail that points away from the sun, as if the solar wind were a river and the traveler a leaf on its surface. The telescopes are ready for that change. Spectrographs wait to unwrap the colors of the light, to look for water, cyanide, carbon chains, the simple recipes that build complex worlds. You do not need to hold the equations to feel the story. Imagine the traveler moving past dim nebulae and quiet exoplanets, slipping through the neighborhoods of other suns, watching their snow lines and asteroid belts sweep out circles like clock hands. Imagine it crossing the dark divide between those systems, where gravity falls away and distance feels like a still lake. Imagine that slow, deep time. Now see it here, in the frame of our sky, with familiar constellations around it like old trees along a road. You do not have to know where it came from to sense that it is old. The public notices. A headline flickers across a phone. Third interstellar visitor detected. People look up from sidewalks and rooftop gardens. Some seeing nothing new, only the everyday stars. Some, with binoculars, find a soft smear of light. A few, with small backyard telescopes, sketch what they see, a faint bead, barely brighter than the night. They share the drawings with strangers and speak of awe. The comments thread is simple and kind. Where should I look? When is it highest? Is it safe? The answers drift back like warm air. This is how the human fortress keeps watch together, by asking and sharing and looking again. In a lab far away, analysts check the speed. If it is fast enough, faster than our sun can hold, then the label interstellar makes sense. If its path bends only a little around the sun and keeps going, that, too, fits. The numbers point that way. The team marks the confidence and keeps their voices gentle. Science builds a bridge across doubt. The bridge is steady because people test each plank with care. Meanwhile, the story widens. Someone asks if it is a messenger. The word settles in the air like dust. A messenger does not have to carry a note. It can carry a question. What is the sky like between the stars? What chemistry hides in the cold? Are objects like this common, invisible until a telescope's gaze meets them at just the right hour? The questions rise and then they settle, like birds on a wire, patient and quiet. We return to the image, a brush stroke across the dark. Clouds move beneath it, lit from below by cities. On one island, a child with a blanket on their shoulders asks if the glow is a spaceship. A parent smiles and says, "It's a traveler." On a mountain, a technician checks the dome seals and nods at the weather report. In a quiet office, someone updates a plot and sends the file to a colleague on the other side of the world. The planet turns. The traveler moves. The watch continues. There is no hurry in this chapter. If you close your eyes, you can still see the faint path, like a chalk line on black velvet. You can feel the meaning of perihelion without drawing it close, warm, brief. After that, the distance grows again. Our visitor will slip back into the deep lane from which it came. But the time we share with it is not empty. It is filled with listening. Instruments tune. Software calibrates. The quiet work of patience becomes a kind of prayer. In the coming nights, the telescopes will ask for more light. They will stack exposures, combine frames, remove the fixed stars, and keep only what moves. What remains will be a moving dot and a set of numbers. Right ascension, declination, magnitude, arc length, residuals. These small things are enough to draw a map. From them, a path blooms on the screen, curving in a way that answers old questions and makes new ones. You may wonder about the name, why 3i, why Atlas? The letters sit at the edge of our understanding, calm and spare. They point to the survey that noticed the glow first, to the tradition that labels a visitor by the path it takes, not by who first dreamed about it. There is a lesson in that too. The cosmos keeps its own ledger. We only read a line when it passes under our lamp. The night deepens. The traveler climbs a little higher. A thin frost laces the grass. Somewhere, an operator yawns and refocuses a guiding star. Somewhere else, a student loads a program and teaches it to find a slightly better answer. The scene is ordinary, which makes it beautiful. Awe does not need thunder. It needs time and a careful gaze. If you are still awake, breathe in and out and let your shoulders fall. The sky will always have more travelers than we can name. Most are stones and ice. Some carry dust that sparks under sunlight like a slow fire. Each one writes a soft line across the dark and then moves on. The meaning we find is the meaning we bring, that we noticed, that we measured with care, that we shared the sight with one another. And as the luminous haze fades for a while behind thin cloud, a small question lingers in the cradle of silence. We know this is a visitor. We know its path and its gentle turn by the sun. We can model its breath when the heat arrives. But what does 3i truly mean in the ledger of the sky? And why, in a universe so vast, does that little number make our hearts lift? The glow thins to a memory over the horizon, and in its fading, it carries a secret that feels close at hand, quiet, patient, and waiting to be understood. The label looks small on the screen, 2 characters and a mark. 3i. It sits beside the object's name like a quiet badge, almost shy. Yet inside those 2 symbols lives a journey longer than any road on Earth. Interstellar, the astronomers say, and the word opens like a door. It means not from here, not born in the sun's warm family. A visitor from the spaces between, where starlight thins and time feels deep and slow. Before this, there were others. One Anomalies slipped through first, long and dark, with a brightness that flickered as it turned, an emotion that refused to follow the simple tug of gravity alone. Then came 2i Borisov, more like a classic comet, breathing out gas and dust in a familiar haze. And now 3i TLS, carrying a number that is less a count than a whisper. This is no accident. This is a pattern beginning to show. The number 3 is simple, but I is the secret. It tells the story of a path not closed, of a trajectory that does not loop around the sun like a tethered kite. Instead, the curve opens hyperbolic, more farewell than greeting. When analysts see that shape, they read it as a signature. Velocity too high to be kept. Eccentricity greater than 1. A stone, perhaps, or an icy shard, moving on a line that will never return to where it started. The sky writes in geometry. Astronomers learn to read its cursive. In quiet rooms, late at night, teams trace this writing with care. They subtract the Earth's own motion, the slow swing of our planet around the sun, the tiny push of sunlight on dust. They mark the object's shift against background stars, frame to frame, like watching a drifting seed cross a window pane. The numbers march into columns: right ascension, declination, rate, magnitude. Out of these, a story forms: the angle of the path, the tilt of its plane, the place where it will pass closest to our star. None of it is loud. All of it matters. 3i is a key you can hold in your hand. Turn it once, and it opens memory. You remember 1i Amwan's puzzle. No tail, but a nudge as if sunlight pushed more than expected. You remember 2i Borisov's comfort, the familiar breath of a comet, colored by the same simple chemistry that lives in so many icy worlds. Turn the key again, and it opens a map. Between the stars is not empty. It is a sea with currents we barely know. Dust flows there. Ancient debris travels there. Perhaps the broken pieces of other systems, shards from collisions, long ago wander in silence until gravity sends them skimming past our door. The number also opens a question. If it is not from here, why is it here now? There is no message written on its surface, no sign carved into rock. But timing can feel like intention when night makes the mind tender. People wonder, and wonder is not a mistake. It is a lamp. Still, the careful voice of science stays steady. Chance can be rich with meaning after the fact. The cosmos is broad enough that even rare visitors keep appointments somewhere, someone. Our task is not to decide what it wants. Our task is to learn what it is. So the watchers slow their breathing and read what the code allows. 3I means the third interstellar object, confirmed by the way it moves through our gravity field. Interstellar means its speed and path cannot be explained by a simple bound orbit around the sun. It glides in, brushes close, and leaves. That alone is enough to change how we think about our neighborhood. We are not in a sealed room. We live at a crossroads. The label is spare because it must be. Names in astronomy carry weight. They are anchors for shared work. You can speak 3I Atlas in a room of engineers, in a classroom, on a mountaintop, and everyone understands which traveler you mean. The letters point to the survey that saw it first, a robotic guardian scanning the night with patient eyes. The number places it in a small line of kin. The A carves it away from the sun's long family of comets that return, again and again, like faithful comets on snowbound orbits. This one does not return. It crosses and moves on. There is something gentle in that thought. Imagine a caravan passing through a town at night. Wheels roll softly over stone. Lamps sway. The caravan does not stop to bargain or sing. It moves with a purpose that belongs to another horizon. In the morning, when people step outside, they notice new tracks in the dust and ask where they lead. 3I is a mark like that. You see it and look outward, past the brightness of our own sky, to the space where those tracks begin. How do astronomers read such marks? With codes, yes, but also with habits of mind. They test their instruments. They repeat their measurements. They share data so others can confirm or correct. They turn uncertainties into smaller uncertainties, until the path of the traveler is not a guess, but a map with a thin line and careful numbers. The process is plain and slow by design. It keeps us honest. It invites the world to look over the shoulder and find the same result. In the quiet between clicks and calculations, people feel other things as well. Hope, because each visitor is proof we are part of a larger story. Fear, a small one, because unknowns can carry risk, and because our planet is fragile even when the sky looks calm. These feelings are not enemies of science. They are companions. They remind us why we look up and why we build instruments that do not sleep. 3I also invites a lesson in how astronomers hear origin stories without words. Motion is a memory. If a rock forms around another star and is thrown outward by a giant planet's pull, its speed at the edge of that system will echo in the speed we measure here. If radiation and time erode its surface, the way it brightens or refuses to brighten can hint at what lies within ice, dust, something darker and more compact. The number does not tell us all of this, but it tells us where to start. There is humility in that. The cosmos does not offer full explanations with its labels. It offers clues. Interstellar means not ours, not artificial, not danger, not friend. It means carry your tools and listen. And so the watchers do. Spectrographs are tuned. Radar schedules are discussed. Observatories adjust their cadence so that the small point in the sky appears on more frames. More nights, more telescopes spread across the earth like gentle beacons. The world becomes, for a while, one instrument with many mirrors. On screens, the object is only a few pixels wide. In lives, it is larger. People step outside and feel the air. Some point a phone app at the sky and let a blue arrow show where to look, even if what they find is only darkness and the comfort of trying. That is a real part of the work. The human fortress is not only hardware. It is attention, shared across time zones, stitched together by curiosity and patient care. The number 3 becomes a threshold. 1 might be a surprise. 2 might be a pair. 3 begins to look like a rhythm. If visitors arrive often enough to carry labels, then the lanes between stars are busier than we thought. The emptiness we imagined is not empty. It is a quiet highway with travelers spaced so far apart that only the most watchful eyes see them pass. The number is small, yes, but it turns our heads outward to a larger count we have yet to learn. There is a softer secret tucked inside the code, too. It is about us. Each time we mark a new interstellar visitor, we are marking a step in our own ability to notice. Better surveys, wiser software, more open sharing. We think we are labeling the object, but in a quiet way, we are labeling our growth. The eye is the sky's part of the story. The number is ours. And so the line appears again on the screen, the projected path, the little symbols for planets, the tiny tick marks for days. You could trace it with a fingertip, past the outer cold, into the region where sunlight strengthens, then back outward toward the long dark lane. The figure looks simple. The meaning is not. Somewhere out there, around another sun, are worlds and rings and belts that shape this traveler. Somewhere, the same physics that keeps our Earth in orbit sent this small body outward on a long, lonely road. That symmetry is a comfort. It says the rules are shared. It says we live in a universe that holds together. When the screens dim and the room grows quiet, the label remains in mind. 3i. It is modest. It does not pretend to be a poem, but it carries a feeling like the first step onto a new path, the crunch of gravel, the cool of shade, the thought that even a simple sign can point towards something vast. The number is small enough to fit in your palm. The idea is big enough to change how you see the sky. You breathe, and the night breathes with you. High above, a faint point keeps its measured pace. The code that names it is just a doorway. What waits beyond is the long corridor of understanding we'll walk with steady steps. For now, the label is enough, a soft mark in a ledger written in starlight, telling us that far places sometimes pass close, and that even a quiet number can hold an ocean of distance and time. In the hush that follows, the meaning lingers like a low note, and the sky seems to lean closer, as if a secret were near, gentle, and patient, waiting to be found, on a quiet ridge where wind combs the grass in slow silver waves. A white dome turns its cheek to the night. The mountain has learned to keep secrets, but the dome does not sleep. Inside, a telescope waits with its eyelid half open, cables tucked like veins, mirrors cooled to a hush. The system has a simple name, Atlas, but in the dark, it feels like a lighthouse sweeping a soft beam across the ocean of stars. The routine begins with calm precision. Roof panels slide, letting in the thin breath of high air. Motors wake with a gentle hum that settles into the bones. The telescope slews to a field, stops, and steadies. A filter wheel clicks, placing a glass disc into the light's path. One band for blue, another for orange, yet another for deeper red. The choices are not artistic. They are measurements, tuned to the way starlight carries information. The detector is ready, a flat universe of tiny pixels waiting to sip photons from the sky. Exposure. The word lands like a feather. For a handful of seconds, the sensor listens. Each pixel counts the soft taps of light as if they were raindrops on a quiet lake. The shutter closes. A raw image flows to the computer racks in the corner, where fans push air in a low, steady chorus. To the eye, the frame looks like a spray of white dust on black cloth. To the system, it is a field of numbers, bright, faint, and in between each star holding still, each galaxy a little smear, each hot pixel a misbehaving spark to be calmed by calibration. Atlas does not stare. It moves, returns, and moves again. This is cadence, the rhythm that turns still images into a clock. One field now, the same field minutes later, and again after that. Shift, repeat, compare. In the difference between frames, motion reveals itself. An asteroid stepping like a slow dancer across the stage. A meteor flash, gone in a heartbeat. The faintest newcomer creeping between fixed lights. The software subtracts the background sky, removes the steady stars, and shows only what changes. In the subtraction, life appears. Tonight, the object tagged as 3IATLS is somewhere in this sweep. It will not announce itself. It will be a soft sea drifting. The pipeline lines of code written by patient minds checks each candidate with a temperate voice. Does it move as the geometry predicts? Is its brightness reasonable for its distance? Is it an echo of a cosmic ray, or does it belong to the sky? False alarms fall away. True motion remains. In the control room, the displays glow a kind watery blue. One screen shows the live frame, stars sprinkled like salt. Another shows a difference image, most of the field gone to gray, with only a few small points left, little marks of change. A third is a log that scrolls without hurry times, coordinates, exposure lengths, temperatures. None of it asks to be dramatic. It simply tells the truth of the moment, line by careful line. There is more than seeing. There is color. When the filter wheel turns, the telescope tastes the light. Blue photons tell one kind of story, perhaps younger stars, or the crisp outer edges of a coma just waking under sunlight. Red photons tell another, dust grains glowing a little warmer, a signature of the particle sizes building the haze. Switch again, and a different band teases out ion tails, those ribbons that whisper when the solar wind touches gas. Atlas is not a painter, but the spectrograph and filters make a quiet palette. From it, shape and substance begin to form. The language here is gentle and exact. Signal to noise. Can we trust the glow above the random tremble of the detector? Seeing. How steady is the air's hand as it carries starlight down? Limiting magnitude. How faint a whisper can tonight's sky allow? The operators speak these words like those who set sails. They are not obstacles. They are weather conditions to work with, not against. Frames accumulate. The object appears in one, then another, separated by time, a dot that shifts by just enough to be itself. Software follows it, linking detections the way a mind links footfalls in sand. Outside, the ridge breathes. The dome turns its head to the next field, then returns. This is how survey telescopes comb the cosmos, not by staring at one treasure, but by tending the whole garden, row by row. Somewhere between the images and the logs, a spectrograph clears its throat. Light is split into a thin rainbow, not the ribbon you see in rain, but a fine bar with lines where atoms and molecules etch their names. Even a low-resolution spectrum is a clue. Water molecules have a way of glowing. Carbon compounds paint the light differently. Dust scatters blue more than red, nudging colors in a way the system can weigh. The first cuts are broad, like seeing a shape in silhouette. Later, deeper instruments refine the curve and sharpen the edges. Tonight's goal is modest. Catch the traveler, measure its step, add to the chain of positions. But every modest point sits on a deep foundation. The raw frames are cleaned by calibration images taken at dusk and dawn bias. Frames that catch the detector's whisper when no light is present. Dark frames that map its heat when the shutter stays shut. flat fields that iron out the small unevenness across the sensor. Each correction is a kindness to the truth. Past discoveries hum quietly in the room. One eye, Oumuamua's odd acceleration, taught the pipeline to look for motion that didn't fit the simple tug of gravity alone. Two-eye Borisov's faithful coma reminded the system that sometimes the sky is classic and kind. Those memories live in the code thresholds tuned by experience. Checks added after long nights, alerts that know when to be loud and when to be calm. Atlas is an automated sentinel, but it carries the touch of many hands. On screen, pixels become a pulse. The moving point, faint as a breath on glass, steps across the field in just the way predictions suggest. The residuals, the tiny differences between expected and measured positions, are small and evenly scattered. Like snow the wind has not bothered to sculpt. That steadiness is a quiet relief. It says the clockwork holds. It says tonight's air is kind and the instruments are listening well. With positions in hand, the software updates the orbital elements. These are the traveler's driver's license. Semi-major axis, open in this case, a sign of the path's hyperbolic heart. Eccentricity, greater than 1, the mark of a farewell. Inclination, the tilt of the plane, telling how the object slices across the flat of our planetary family. Argument of perihelion, longitude of ascending node. Words like small stones, stable underfoot. When the elements shift by only a breath with new data, confidence grows like a slow sunrise. The team checks for patterns inside the noise. They do not hunt for romance. They hunt for reliability. Does the brightness change with a rhythm that might hint at spin? Does the coma swell in a way that suggests jets are waking? Is there a faint ion tail in the blue band? The kind that points straight away from the sun like a compass needle in a solar wind. Each answer is a shade, not a verdict. Tonight sketches shapes that later nights will color. It helps to remember what a survey telescope is built to do. It is not a magnifying glass for one object. It is a net spread wide. Its cadence catches motion. Its filters catch character. Its subtraction clears the stage of fixed actors so that the moving ones can be seen. The work has an art to it, but the art is in the patience, not the flourish. Away from the screens, outside the dome, the Milky Way drapes like a pale river. A meteor scratches a brief white line and is gone, as if the sky is signing its name on a dark card. The telescope does not flinch. It turns to its next field, settles, and listens again. In the valley, a few homes blink out their lights. On another ridge, another dome is doing the same measured dance. Together, they form a chorus of watchers who never need to shout. When clouds drift in thin as breath, the operators lower the cadence, switch to brighter fields, then wait for the stars to sharpen. No one is upset. The sky sets the tempo, and the system keeps time. Logs note the change. Transparency down, seeing soft. Later frames regain their crispness, and the pipeline's confidence lifts back to its quiet hum. Back in the data, a tiny rise in brightness draws a fingertip to the screen. It could be the first hint of sunlight breathing on dark ice. Or it could be a trick of air and chance. The spectrograph's whisper is not strong enough to decide, so the notation is simple. Candidate brightening. Monitor. This is how the mind of the survey stays clear. Label what you see. Ask for confirmation. Let the world check your work. As the night bends toward morning, the object has left its faint footprints on several fields. The link detections go into a report that will move along fiber lines to other instruments, bigger mirrors, narrower slits, deeper exposures. A radar team reads the numbers and wonders if a ping will reach. A radio dish checks the schedule, not for a message to hear, but for the silence that means no engineered line with better certainty. The watchers are many, and each has a role. The strength is not in any single eye. but in the way they overlap. In the final hour before dawn, the ridge grows a shade of pearl. The telescope takes its flat images of the brightening sky to smooth the wrinkles out of the night's work. The dome closes with a long breath. Fans slow. The control room cools from blue to gray. What remains is the record. Timestamps, coordinates, fluxes, errors, notes as soft as footprints in new snow. Nothing in it boasts. Everything in it helps. If you step back from the monitors and let your gaze blur, you can feel a larger shape forming how each pixel, each line of code, each patient exposure folds into a single, steady act, listening to the sky long enough that secrets have time to walk into view. Atlas is not curious in the way a person is, but it is designed by curiosity, and that is close enough. It turns, clicks, listens, and holds out a hand to whatever moves through the dark. And somewhere in that dark, the traveler keeps to its measured course, a soft ember in a vast, cool sea. The numbers we write tonight will let us trace its arc with greater care, find a grace in its tilt, weigh the hush of its light. In this calm work cadence, filters, subtraction, the spectrograph's thin song, an intention appears that is not the traveler's but ours, to see clearly, gently, and long enough that even the faintest passage leaves a true line. The ridge grows bright, the screens dim, and the hush that follows feels full, as if the night has set down a clue within reach, patient and quiet. Waiting to be read. The path begins as a thin idea, a handful of points plotted on a quiet grid. Each one a night, each night a patient measurement. Put them together and a line appears, not quite straight, not quite curved, an intention, forming. The object people now call 3IATLS moves as if answering a distant tide. It enters our system with a calm that feels practiced, drifts under the sun's light, and bends just enough to say hello before turning away. The shape of that bend is its confession. Most comets are members of a family. They arc like swallows around a nest, returning after long winters in the dark. Their orbits are ellipses, closed loops, stretched and elegant, but loops all the same. Interstellar travelers speak a different geometry. Their tracks are hyperbolas, open curves, more goodbye than welcome, a grace note that never repeats. Mathematicians write the sign of this difference as a single number, the eccentricity. Greater than 1, and the curve will not close. The stranger's trajectory carries that mark. In a control room washed with soft blue light, the orbital elements settle into place as calmly as stones laid in a path. Semi-major axis meaningless now in the usual sense, because the shape is open. Eccentricity comfortably above 1. Inclination, the tilt of the traveler's plane, the angle at which it slices through the flat of our planetary neighborhood. Longitude of the node, the place it crosses our plane. Argument of perihelion, the orientation of the closest brush. Each term is modest. Together, they are a map drawn in quiet lines. Perihelion waits ahead like a warm turning. There, the traveler will come closest to the sun, and the sun will write truth on its surface. If ice hides beneath a crust, it may exhale. If dust blankets that ice, the exhale may be slower, like breath through cloth. Those gentle reactions will nudge the path in ways gravity alone cannot. Astronomers call these non-gravitational forces, tiny taps that matter when added over weeks. The watchers are ready to weigh them, to see if the line tightens or loosens in a way that hints at jets, grains, and spin. Between now and that moment, the path runs like a quiet river between landmarks. The inner planets keep their posts, Mercury close in, Venus pale and steady, Earth watching with careful eyes, Mars rust red along its track. No close passage alarms the room tonight. The geometry is courteous. Still, simulations unfurl on nearby screens. Millions of virtual pebbles, perturbed by the same tugs the traveler will feel. Gravity is a universal host, and it offers the same invitations to all who pass. The models show tiny differences accumulating like snow on branches. Not dramatic, just real. Gravity assist, someone says gently, not because it will happen here, but because the phrase carries a picture that helps. A planet can lean its moving mass into a traveler's path and change its speed and direction, like a dance partner offering a turn. For an interstellar object moving as fast and as freely as this one, the offers are light and mostly refused. Still, the calculations include them. Nothing in the sky is ignored just because it is unlikely. The line on the projection remains smooth, a clean curve that brushes sunward and sweeps away. You could draw the curve with a finger in cool air. Incoming asymptote from one side of the sky, a gentle plunge toward the sun, then an outgoing asymptote toward another starless quadrant. The words sound complicated. The feeling is not. It is like watching a bird skim a lake with one wingtip. Touch, lift, gone. Inclination adds a quiet beauty. The traveler does not obey our plane. Most planets keep to a shared sheet, thin as a page when seen from far away. The stranger's path is tilted, crossing that page at a slant that tells of other seas, other alignments, other clocks. That angle is a memory of its origin, the way it was thrown from the gravity well that built it, and though no one can yet name the parent star, the tilt says, not ours. Solar radiation pressure is another soft editor of paths. Sunlight carries momentum, and dust grains act like sails whether they mean to or not. Big bodies barely feel the push. Smaller fragments and fine coma particles do. If the traveler breathes, the grains will trail like a gauzy veil, swept back by the solar wind, aligned along magnetic whispers and light itself. The big mass will continue on with only the lightest hint of a shove. Measure closely, and that hint becomes a sentence about size, density, and skin. There is a temptation to see patterns where none exist. The mind is a pattern-finding instrument, tuned by survival and story. If the trajectory glances past certain latitudes, if it seems to keep respectful distance from worlds that hold air and hope, someone will wonder about intention. This is not a flaw. It is a feeling. The calm reply is to test. Feed the initial conditions into a model. Rewind 1,000,000 years. Fast forward 1,000,000 more. Change the starting velocity by a breath. Tilt the entry a few degrees. If the same open curve appears, if the same brush with sunlight recurs across scenarios, chance stands up and nods. Coincidence is not a message, but it can be a teacher. The spectrograph's thin rainbow, taken on earlier nights, joins the conversation about motion in an indirect way. If the coma brightens as the curve bends, and the brightness change follows the square of the distance to the sun, the behavior looks like a classic comet. If the change is slower or oddly timed, if jets flicker in and out like slow pulses, then the non-gravitational forces may push a little differently, nudging the outbound path by a whisper. A whisper matters when the journey is long. The numbers speak to another kind of geometry, time. An interstellar trajectory places the traveler on a schedule we did not write. It was flung outward ages ago by a giant planet's tug, by a close pass with a sibling world, by a chain of small kicks that added up. It waited in emptiness so deep that emptiness had texture. Now it crosses our sky for a few months, then leaves for centuries of dark drifting. The curve is not simply a way through space. It is a way through eras. To track it is to hold hands with a clock far older than our cities, our languages, our first campfires. In this calm work, uncertainty is not a flaw. It is a quantity. Every plotted point has an error bar that looks like a small cross, and those crosses shrink as nights join nights. The path on the screen wears a ribbon of probability around it, wide at first, then narrowing like a river entering a canyon. The narrowing is a kind of music. Learning is it. It says the world is knowable if you are patient and gentle with your tools. A small discussion hums about solar tides, a phrase that sounds like the sea because the math is family. The sun's gravity stretches bodies a little, tugs particles in ways that mix with spin and venting. If a jet prefers one face of the traveler, the spin state can make that push periodic, like a heartbeat. If such a pattern exists, the outgoing asymptote will tilt by a fraction of a degree. That fraction becomes a breadcrumb for future watchers who might try to see the object long after it has faded beyond reach. Radar planners study the projected curve the way sailors study a shoreline. Will the range and geometry permit a ping? If the echo returns, even as a faint sigh, it can tie the orbit to an absolute distance and sharpen the elements with a single bright nail. But radar has its own tides, schedules, power, angles. If the geometry is unkind, the path must be taken on faith in optical patience. Nobody argues. The sky sets terms. The watchers adapt. In the valley below the telescope, a road unwinds toward towns where people sleep and wake without knowing the math above them has turned their sky into a book. That is as it should be. The book is written for anyone who looks up, but it does not demand that you read every page. For those who do, the curve of the stranger's trajectory is a sentence of simple words that say something deep. The universe is open. Things enter our circle and leave it. We are part of a crossroads, not a cul-de-sac. The models finish another run. The line holds. No hidden approach. No secret swing by. The traveler keeps its respectful distance, bows to the sun's warmth, and extends its route back into the long, cool dark. An operator notes that the residuals remain small. Another sips tea gone lukewarm and updates the uncertainty ribbon. The room feels the kind of relief that does not cheer. It simply settles. Outside, the stars hang with their steady patience. Orion rises. A meteor writes and erases itself. Beyond the constellations, the galaxy's disk is a pale river, and beyond that disk, other rivers turn unseen. Somewhere in those lanes, a sibling to this traveler begins its own unhurried arc. The mind can follow for a moment, then lets go, content with the curve it can hold. There is one last look at the projection before the monitors dim. The incoming line, the sunward bend, the outbound flight 3 strokes, as calm as breath. If you relax your gaze, you can feel the message inside the math. Gravity drafts the letter. Sunlight edits the margins. Dust, ice, and time sign their names at the bottom. Reading it, you learn where the traveler has been and where it will go. And in that reading, you hear something else as well. A quiet assurance that even in an open universe, paths can be known, and that knowledge can be a soft light in a very wide night. The line on the screen fades with the room's glow, but the path itself continues above the ridge, steady and sure. No trumpet, no flourish, just motion that speaks in a language older than our words. In that language, the bend past the sun is a single syllable. It says enough to keep wonder awake and leaves a stillness behind that feels full, as if the dark itself were holding a gentle answer just out of reach. Night folds over the ridge like a dark blanket, and the traveler hangs there, a small, soft ember in a vast room. The telescope breathes and turns. A spectrograph, cool and patient, opens its narrow mouth to the light. What seems like one color to the eye becomes a thin rainbow on a sensor. Not the wide arc after rain, but a fine bar with tiny marks where atoms and molecules leave their names. In this quiet glow, color becomes language. The first rule is simple. Starlight holds stories, but you must spread it out to read them. A prism or grating pulls the light apart by wavelength, short waves to one side, long waves to the other. Each chemical likes to sing in certain pitches. When that chemical glows or absorbs, it draws a line on the rainbow, a fingerprint that no other element can copy. The spectrograph does not guess. It listens, then writes down what it heard. For a traveler like this, 3ITL, as the question is kind and sharp. What are you made of? And how do you behave when the sun's breath winds around you? If the surface warms, ices turn to gas and drift outward, forming a coma, a gentle veil that wraps the nucleus. Dust escapes with the flow and fills a tail like chalk brushed from a hand. In the rainbow, gases and dust leave traces. Cyanide can glow a clean blue. Carbon molecules paint the light with bands that shimmer in green, the swan bands the old books call them. Sodium can show a golden taste, a brief flare like a grain of salt catching fire. The spectrograph looks for all of this, patient and even-tempered. The light is faint, so the exposures run long. Pixels sip photons one by one, as if counting snowflakes that land on a quiet sleeve. A filter blocks the strongest sky glow. The slit of the spectrograph points at the coma's heart, then slides along the tail to sample space farther out. This is careful work. Close to the nucleus, lines grow sharp and strong. Farther away, they fade, mixed with dust-scattered light. By tasting different places, the instrument builds a map of how gases change as they travel and cool. Color measures time as well as space. Early in the approach, when sunlight is weak, the rainbow is mostly dust sunlight bounced off tiny grains, a soft reflection that reddens with size. As warmth builds, gas lines rise like quiet hills along the bar of color. What rises first can tell you what lies shallow in the skin. Water is common, but shy, invisible light. It often reveals itself through fragments, O in ultraviolet, H in lines not seen by these optics. Carbon and cyanide speak more easily here. If their bands strengthen in a steady rhythm with distance to the sun, the behavior looks like a familiar comet. If the timing is odd, late, early, or pulsing, then the surface may be patchy or crusted, a skin that opens by fits and starts. There is a poetry to the math. The strength of a line, measured against the background, becomes a number called flux. Divide by the right constants how many photons the telescope can catch, how long it listened, and flux becomes a rate, how many molecules per second leave the surface. Even a faint line can mean a great outflow if the traveler is far and the instrument small. The team writes these rates in tidy columns, CN, CC, NH, O when they can. Each number is a small door. Open all the doors, and a chemistry lab appears in the sky. The dust speaks in its own way. Dust does not make thin lines. It draws a curve. Small grains scatter blue light more than red, like the day sky on Earth. Larger grains tend to redden the reflection. By comparing brightness in different filters, the watchers sketch a size distribution, the mix of fine powder, small pebbles, and fluffy clumps drifting from the coma. The phase angle, the angle between the sun, the traveler, and the telescope, adds a gentle twist. At certain angles, dust forward scatters light, and the coma brightens like a fog in car headlights. That, too, becomes a measured clue. Sometimes the rainbow carries a surprise that is not a secret, just a reminder. Sunlight itself. The spectrum of the sun shines back from dust, filled with fine dips where elements in the sun's outer layers absorb. These Fraunhofer lines ride in the reflected light like echoes. Subtracting that solar pattern with care leaves only the traveler's own voice. The subtraction is an art of patience. Too much, and truth is erased. Too little, and truth is buried. Over several nights, a rhythm appears. When the traveler is still far, the spectrum is quiet reflection from dust, a gentle red slope, a hint of blue tuck near the coma's edge. Then, nearer the sun, a faint CN band rises, a small ridge on the graph, shy but real. Later, the carbon bands push up, soft hills layered like dunes. The watchers do not rush to claim a rare mix or a unique brew. Many comets wear this chemistry like a classic coat. Yet even classic coats have stitching. The exact ratios, the way bands grow and fade, the dust's tint, these details trace a family story. Ordinary can still be precious when it arrives from the deep between stars sea. A few frames catch the tail where ions might glow. Ion tails run straight, guided by magnetic fields in the solar wind. Dust tails curve, ruled by the slow sail of sunlight on grains. If ion lines appear, for instance, they confirm the touch of the sun's exhale. The spectrograph sensitivity sets the bar. A non-detection, if the limit is deep enough, is not emptiness. It is a boundary you can trust. No signal above this line, the log says, and that simple phrase builds a floor for future steps. The finest part of the rainbow is not only what it shows, but how it changes with time. A day of steady lines says the venting is smooth. A night with a sudden rise hints at a jet waking, a crack where heat found a tunnel to fresher ice. If brightness then falls, perhaps that vent clogged or rotated out of view. A slow wobble in line strength can mark spin, like a lighthouse beam crossing an eye every few hours. In these gentle pulses, motion and makeup speak together. There is room for imagination, but it keeps its shoes tidy. One might wonder if the rainbow could hide an engineered line, a sharp, narrow spike and a frequency chosen on purpose. Radio telescopes are better at that search, and their silence so far draws a frame around the idea. Nothing heard, at least not in the tested bands. Here, in visible light, the spectrograph stays with the natural set molecules common in cometary breath. Dust that glows by reflection, ions lit by the sun. What is not seen can be as honest as what is. The record is steady, no forbidden laser peak, no band out of place. Only the expected chemistry, shaped by heat and time. Even so, behavior can be an anomaly without chemistry being strange. A crust can mask ice and delay its song. Large, compact grains can carry heat away and return it later, making lines swell after the closest pass. A layer of organics can darken the skin and change how light seeps in. These are not wild ideas. They are lessons learned from other comets. The spectrograph listens for them the way you listen for a familiar tune played in a different key. On a quiet break, someone looks up from the rainbow and glances at the sky beyond the slit. The Milky Way is a pale cloth laid over black. Out there, in that cloth, live star nurseries, hot blue suns, quiet red ones, and planets wrapped in night. The traveler began far from here. The chemistry now drifting around it may have formed in a cold mold beyond another system's snowline, then slept for ages before this warm minute woke it. To taste that ancient frost in our own sky is like opening a letter that took eons to arrive. When the data return to the lab, the lines are fit with models that turn shapes into numbers. The fit is never perfect. Real comas are messy. They breathe in fans and pockets, and dust clumps in slow confetti. But the fit is close enough to teach. Production rates carry error bars, the honest hands raised by uncertainty. Dust color slopes get their own gentle ranges. With each night, the bars shrink, and the picture gathers weight. In the back of everyone's mind sits a small comparison. Almamah did not speak in strong comet lines. Its spectrum was shy and featureless, even as its motion betrayed a non-gravitational push. Borisov sang the classic comet song, bright and clear, with gas and dust that matched the recipes we know. Where does this new traveler hum? So far, its voice sounds familiar whispers of CN, hints of carbon bands, a dust curve that reddens like many icy wanderers. Familiar does not mean boring. It means the universe shares ingredients across great distances. It means chemistry repeats like stars repeating their patterns, and in that repetition lives comfort. There is a last taste before dawn. The slit slides to the tail's edge, where dust thins and gas cools. Lines soften, then sink toward the noise. The instrument logs one more frame and closes its eye. The raw rainbow will be cleaned and stacked, solar echoes removed, sky glow trimmed, then laid with care beside the others. Into the archive it goes not as a trophy, but as a step in a staircase. If you sit with the graphs and let your eyes soften, the lines become a kind of score notes rising and falling in slow time, a lullaby written by sunlight and ice. You do not need to play every note to feel the song. It says, the traveler breathes. The breath carries simple molecules. Dust drifts in sizes that hold the sun's color and send it back to us. It says, the stranger is not a riddle of impossible matter, but a body shaped by the same quiet rules that shape comets here. And yet, as the screens dim and the ridge grows pale, a small margin remains uncolored. The spectrum speaks in facts, but facts leave space around their edges. Could behavior, slow and careful, still draw a pattern we have not named? Could timing, not chemistry, hold the clue that matters most? The graphs rest, the instruments sleep, and in the hush that follows, the rainbow's thin voice seems to linger in the air, clear, gentle, and unfinished like a soft chord, held just long enough to hint there is more to hear when the night returns. The night remembers. It remembers the first time a stranger slipped through without staying, the long, quiet shape given a Hawaiian name, Amoa, the scout from far away. It remembers the second, Borisov, a comet that breathed like many comets do, with a halo and a tail that matched our books. Now the new traveler moves across the dark, and the mind brings back those earlier visits the way a coastline remembers old waves. Astronomers speak softly when they say the names. One-Eye Oumuamua arrived first, fast and slim, a point so faint that its shape had to be guessed from the way its brightness rose and fell. It tumbled, not neatly, but in a complex spin like a baton moved by a sleepy hand. As it glided away from the sun, its path showed a small push not tied to gravity alone, a non-gravitational acceleration, gentle and steady, as if sunlight pressed more than expected. That push sparked careful debate. Was it gas that we could not see? Was it dust too fine for our instruments? Was it something else in outgassing without a coma, or a skin that reflected light in a special way? The answers stayed just out of reach, like fish in clear water. Then 2I Borisov came, and with it a familiar song. A coma grew round and bright. A dust tail unfurled. Spectra showed common molecules, cyanide, carbon chains, hints of water's broken pieces. Its behavior fit the models that school us in comet life. It was interstellar, yes, but it wore an ordinary coat. From it we learned that the space between stars can send visitors that look much like our own icy wanderers. That truth was a comfort, and also a challenge. If the road between suns can carry both the strange and the familiar, we must be ready for either kind of arrival. Now, as 3I ATLS drifts through our care, the echoes of those two shapes are listening. The watchers do not force the new to match the old. They use the memories as tools, measuring sticks for light and motion, quiet questions to hold against the stars. Does the brightness flicker with a rhythm like Oumuamua's slow tumble, or does it swell the way a gassy coma breathes? Do spectra whisper classic bands, or do they draw a plain, featureless slope? Does the path hold to gravity's draft, or does sunlight and vapor add their own soft edits to the line? No matter the answer, the earlier visitors have taught us how to watch. We learn to search for tiny accelerations by checking positions, night after night, until the residuals, those small differences between prediction and truth, turn into a pattern. We learn to look for jets that might be too faint for a big tail, but still strong enough to push. We learn to be careful with albedo, the brightness of a surface, because a shiny skin can pretend to be larger, and a dark one can pretend to be small. We learned that an object can speak in motion, even when its spectrum is shy. And that silence on the radio can be a form of knowledge too. Oumuamua's silence became a kind of frame. Radio dishes listened for narrowband lines, the crisp signatures of a transmitter, and heard only the wide hiss of space. Planetary radar could not reach it in time. Optical spectra showed no strong gas lines. Yet the trajectory told a tale. A tiny, steady push outward, aligned with how sunlight would press a thin or venting body. Models tried on many skins porous ice that sheds gas without a bright halo, fluffy dust that responds to light like a sail, surfaces that gleam in one direction more than another. None settled the matter completely, but each added a plank to a bridge across uncertainty. Borisov, in contrast, let the instruments relax into known habits. Its coma became a classroom, and the spectrograph an easy reader. Dust color slopes matched what we had seen before. Gas production rates rose and fell with distance to the sun. There were differences. Yes, ratios that hinted at a slightly different recipe baked in another system's cold, but the family resemblance was strong. If Oumuamua was a riddle, Borisov was a paragraph in a familiar book, written in a dialect we could learn. These two are the bookends that hold the shelf where tonight's data rest. Between them, 3i, A-tail-A's finds its place. If it brightens with a soft tail and a set of classic bands, we remember Borisov and smile at the shared chemistry of worlds. If its light stays plain while its path shows a whisper of extra push, we remember Oumuamua and let patience stretch. In both cases, the lesson is the same. Read the sky with a steady voice. Let evidence set the pace. There is a deeper echo as well, one that hums below numbers. Oumuamua taught us to be kind to the unknown. It asked the field to hold two truths at once, that imagination is welcome and that measurement is the final guide. People wondered, and that wondering drew more eyes to the task. But the discipline held. Claims were tested and retested. Ideas that felt exciting but could not carry the weight of data were set down gently. What remained were bounds limits on size, on reflectivity, on gas that could have been there but was not seen. Those bounds are not glamour, but they are strong. They turn a mystery from mist into shape. Borisov taught something quieter, the power of ordinary. It showed that interstellar does not mean impossible. A rock and ice body formed around another star can look much like one born in the far edges of our own system. When sunlight warms it, the same simple molecules sing. When dust leaves, it reddens the light in similar ways. The comfort here is not dullness. It is unity. The rules that shape our comets seem to work elsewhere too. The cosmos keeps its recipes simple and repeats them with pride. As 3i Atlas arcs inward, those echoes guide where we point and what we ask. If a tail sharpens, we schedule more spectra. If a faint, steady acceleration appears, we widen the time window for precise astrometry. If brightness flickers, we test for spin. If the coma colors drift, we check grain size and the balance between dust and gas. The flow is calm. Question, measure, compare, refine. Each step is small. Together, they let the picture grow until the outline is clear enough to trust. There is also gratitude in this work. Oumuamua's puzzle forced us to tune pipelines to catch subtle effects and to cross-check with more care. Borisov's classic face let us calibrate those tools against something well-behaved. Because of both, tonight's measurements are cleaner. The software knows what a real change looks like. The schedules leave room for follow-ups. The habit of open data has spread, so that an update in one hemisphere becomes a plan in another before the night is over. A memory returns of early nights with Oumuamua, when plots drew faint curves and voices stayed level, even as surprise warmed the air. The feeling now is different, less shock, more practice. It is like hearing the third bird call of a season. The first caught you off guard. The second told you it was not a fluke. The third lets you settle into the rhythm and really listen to tone and cadence. People outside the domes carry these echoes too, though they may not use the same words. They remember a headline that opened the sky. They remember a sketch, a news clip, a late walk where the stars felt nearer than usual. They remember that Interstellar means the door is not locked. When they step outside tonight and look up, even if they cannot see the traveler, they feel the same open door. That feeling is part of the science, as real in its way as any plot. In the hush of the control room, someone adjusts the axis on a graph so the small changes stand out. Someone else logs the weather seeing steady, transparency good, wind low. The spectrograph finishes a long exposure. The telescope rides them out like a boat at anchor. If the lines on the spectrum rise, the team will mark production rates as the sun warms the skin. If the lines stay flat and the object still nudges off a perfect gravity path, the notes will say so. Neither outcome is a disappointment. Both are ways the universe tells the truth. And when the plotting is done for the night, the echoes soften but do not fade. Oumuamua's long, slim memory, so odd and clean. Barsov's bright, breathing coma, so steady and kind. The new traveler carries both in its shadow, not as a burden but as a context, as two chords that make the next note mean more. The ridge cools. The dome sighs shut. Data hum down fiber lines toward waiting hands. The sky above is wide and quiet, with the Milky Way like a pale road across it. Somewhere along that road, other messengers move, some ordinary, some strange, all honest. Their lessons arrive in pieces motion 1 month, spectra the next, silence that speaks between. The stories of the first and second visitor do not close anything. They open a space where patient work can live. In that space, tonight's faint point finds its measure. And the night keeps its gentle hold, a cradle of silence where the past leans close. And in the soft meeting of memory and light, something new begins to show its face. Gravity is the quiet loom of space. It does not shout. It does not tire. It pulls on everything with a near-silent hand, weaving paths the way a river lays down lines of silver on stone. Tonight, 3IATLAS moves through that hand's gentle grip. Its trajectory curves, as if the darkness itself were a soft fabric, and every mass sun, planets, even far-off clusters tugs a thread. On the screens, the path is a clean stroke, an open curve that leans sunward, bows, and moves on. The numbers beneath are steady, positions, velocities, uncertainties shrinking like morning frost. But beneath those numbers lives a living sea of pulls. The sun rules close by, thick and warm like a hearth. Farther out, Jupiter lends weight like a giant standing at the edge of a field. Saturn, Neptune, and the small worlds add their touches, faint but real. Even the galaxy contributes, a broad background tide from the mass of stars and dark matter cradling the Milky Way. Gravity is a choir with many voices. Some sing loud, some whisper. Together, they write the motion we see. The team runs simulations not to see fireworks, but to watch patience at work. Millions of tiny travelers, test particles, are sent along similar paths in a model of our solar system and beyond. Each one feels the same measured pull from the sun, the planets, and the distant galaxy. The code watches how small differences grow. Most paths hold their shape, bending gently, sweeping out and away. Some diverge by a breath when a virtual planet's gravity offers a minor nudge. The lesson is simple and deep. Even quiet forces change a life if given enough time. Around the edges of the screen, familiar families drift into view asteroid groups sharing orbits like cousins with the same face. Meteor strings that trace long, thin braids across Earth's path. These are not here by accident. Long ago, gravity split objects, guided fragments, and wrote these patterns in slow ink. When 3 IATLS threads this neighborhood, the models ask whether any of those families could shift its route, even slightly. Most chances are small. Most influences are whispers. But the sums of whispers matter. The simulations stack them carefully, one after another, adding grain to grain until a dune appears. Close approaches are checked as calmly as a doctor checks a pulse. Will it brush a planet? No, its line passes politely wide. Could a gravity assist change its arc in a noticeable way? Not with this geometry. A gravity assist is a dance. The traveler comes to the planet's moving gravity well, skims along the curve, and steals or gives a bit of speed. Spacecraft do it on purpose. Comets sometimes do it by chance. Here, the angles and timing make only a minor bow, not a sweeping turn. The path remains an open sentence, capital letter near the sun, a comma by Jupiter's distant reach, and then the sentence carries on toward the edge of night. Inclination tells another part of the tale. Most planets keep to a thin sheet, a plane barely thick as a page when seen edge-on. The traveler crosses that page at a tilt, an angle that remembers another sun's rules. Inclination is a kind of accent in the language of orbits. It says, I learn my steps in a different house. When the simulation paints that tilt in pale blue against the golden plane of the ecliptic, the crossing points ascending and descending nodes stand out like stitches. The path is not rude to our system. It is simply on a road that slants. There is talk of solar tides, a phrase that feels oceanic because the math rhymes with the sea. The sun pulls a little harder on the near side of a body than the far side. That difference stretches things by a hair, shifts small grains within a comet's skin, and can coax vents into breathing if cracks already exist. Tiny changes in shape make tiny changes in how sunlight warms the surface. Tiny changes in warmth make tiny changes in outflow. Add those changes over many hours, and the trajectory receives a push so gentle it would feel like nothing at all to the hand, but the sky notices. Then there is the breath of the sun, the solar wind, a flow of charged particles that sweeps past like a steady breeze. It sculpts tails, combs comas, and can add a whisper of pressure to the dust it meets. The nucleus, dense and comparatively massive, feels less of this. But if dust drifts away in a soft veil, sunlight and wind push that veil into shape, and its shifting weight tugs back on the core by a thread. The models include these threads as best they can, with parameters tested on other comets. Each parameter is a doorway with a label. Too high, and the motion dances in a way the sky does not. Too low, and the curve ignores the wind's known touch. Set them right, and the curve breathes like something alive, steady and clear. Some wonder, in messages and midnight talks, whether intent hides inside the curve. Does the path glance at key latitudes? Circle a certain distance from Earth with too tidy a grace? Measure our blind corridors where telescopes do not always point? The mind that learned to spot patterns in tall grass and star fields feels the shape of coincidence and asks if it is design. The answer here is kindness and tests. The team jumbles the starting conditions by tiny amounts and reruns the clock. They spin Earth's position by days, then weeks. They change the traveler's entry angle by fractions of a degree. If a lattice of special passes remains, if a grid of near misses holds across many tries, intent would stand taller. Instead, the lattice blurs. The grid dissolves into chance. The pattern, such as it is, comes from geometry and timing baked into space long before our watch began. Doubt remains a friend, but it also knows when to nod and step back. Far beyond, the galaxy's mass hums like a bass note. The Milky Way's disk stars, gas, dust sits in a halo of invisible matter, and that wide bowl exerts a slow pull on everything inside it. For objects free of the sun, the galactic tide sets the mood of their far future, bending paths into broad arcs we feel only in sums over ages. The models include a simple version of that tide, not to change tonight's curve, but to honor that the universe is layered, local, solar, galactic. The traveler's inbound line bears a memory of those outer layers, faint as a scent on a coat. Its outbound line will carry our sun's scent in return. Asteroid families drift across the projection like schools of fish, bound not by water, but by a shared history. Some are the pieces of old collisions. Some are gentle clumps shaped by slow resonances with Jupiter's rhythm. The simulations ask a simple question. Does the traveler's road pass through any of these shoals? If it did, tiny encounters could pepper the motion with crumbs of change. But the paths do not intersect closely. The traveler swims past, sees the family shimmer, and moves on. Meteor streams, thin braids left by comets on long walks, are also checked. The stream calendars show no thick thread in its way. The sky remains courteous. Non-gravitational forces are in their own quiet window. If vents awaken on the sunward face, they can act like small thrusters, pushing the nucleus opposite the flow. If the body spins, the orientation of those pushes changes with time. In the data, that can look like a slow wobble in the residuals, a rhythm of tiny over- and undershoots as predictions try to keep up. The team fits a simple model of such forces, a 1, a 2, a 3, the classic coefficients along 3 axes tied to the orbit. Fit too much, and you trick yourself into seeing order where noise lives. Fit too little, and you miss a truth. The balance lands in a narrow place. Include what the data ask for and nothing more. Jupiter, the great editor of paths, gets an extra look. Its gravity can sculpt the outer solar system the way a river carves a valley, redirecting wanderers, catching some, flinging others. Tonight, the traveler remains well clear. Yet the model shows the planet's presence anyway, as a small, smooth bend layered into the bend the sun writes. It is like hearing the harmony beneath a melody. There is pleasure in that harmony. It says the rules hold and the roles remain clear. In the control room, the air is still. A pencil taps once against a notebook and stops. A plot refreshes, scatter small, trend steady. The simplicity is not boring. It is a sign the instruments and the sky are in quiet agreement. When a strong change happens, a noticeable brightening, a faint kink eyes will widen and voices will lift a notch. But gravity's best work is most often like this. Motion that fits a long, honest line with just enough texture for character. A globe sits on a shelf, lit by a lamp that pretends to be a sun. Someone spins it absently while waiting for a run to finish. The continents drift beneath the light. The pole glows, then dims. It is a small echo of the larger play above. Our world is one mass among many. We ride inside the loom's web, held by the same thread that holds the traveler. This thought is not humbling in a hard way. It is soft. It says we are included. When the last simulation for the night ends, the results feel like a well-made bed. Smooth, tucked, no surprises hidden in the folds. The traveler's curve enters, bows, and leaves. No close pass. No secret slingshot. No lattice of visits to checkpoint skies. The small nudges from light and breath are measured within the limits of what the data allow, and those nudges explain every subtle drift we see. The report writes itself in careful lines. Outside, the ridge listens to a wind too light to move the grass. The dome holds still. Above it, the sky is not a sheet, but a depth planets thick as coins. Stars like pinpricks in a drum. Dark lanes fanning across a disk you can only fully see in your mind. Somewhere across that depth, other travelers arc, feeling their own sums of pulls, weaving their own lines into the loom. The knowledge that all of these paths are part of one fabric is a quiet warmth. The monitors dim. The blue glow softens to gray. In the dark glass, the room's reflection hangs for a breath, And in that reflection is the faint curve on the screen, like a thread caught in low light. Gravity holds the world beneath your feet and the traveler far above it with the same patient hand. It writes no messages, yet it writes everything. The curve persists in silence, a soft syllable in a language older than fire, and as the room settles, the syllable seems to lengthen, not louder, but clear, anchoring wonder without needing to explain it, leaving the air full and still, as if something understood had just passed through and kept going. The sun exhales, not like breath you can see, but as a steady river of charged particles, electrons and protons streaming outward in all directions. This is the solar wind, a quiet hiss that fills the space between worlds. Tonight, 3IHLS slides into that river. The traveler is small against the vastness, a drifting shadow with a soft glow, but the wind does not care about size. It touches everything and asks the same patient question: what are you made of, and how do you hold together? From the ridge, the telescope turns its bright eye to the coma, the halo that gathers when ice is warm and turned to gas. A spectrograph waits with a narrow slit, ready to read light like a line of music. Engineers set exposures long enough to catch whispers. In the control room, the blue screens show plots that update without hurry. Count rates, background levels, a calm ladder of numbers. There is no drama here. The sky prefers steady hands. Radiation pressure is the wind's partner. Radiation partner. Sunlight carries momentum. When it hits dust, it nudges it away from the sun. Small grains sail more. Big grains lag. Ions, once made, fall under magnetic fields and the charged flow, and their tail runs straight, like a chalk line snapped across the dark. Dust path curves softly, like smoke in a room with a gentle draft. If the traveler is fragile, these pushes will shape its veil quickly. If it is compact, crusted, or strange, the reaction may be slow or uneven, like a stiff cloth taking time to billow. The first images of the night show a coma that is modest but real, a luminous haze fading outward. Photometry measures the light in rings around the center near, mid, far. The brightness falls with distance in a curve that tells about outflow speed and dust size. Someone taps the number key softly and calculates an AF value, a simple measure of dust production used for comets. The number is not wild. It sits among those of quiet wanderers that pass the sun with little fuss. Yet even quiet curves can carry secrets when the wind leans in. To feel that lean, the team watches the tail geometry. The anti-solar line, a straight line away from the sun, should mark the ion tail, if ions are strong. If the visible tail bends to one side, dust dominates. A small kink can betray changing grain sizes or a new patch of venting on the surface. Tonight, the images suggest a dust-led tail that bows with grace. A faint, straighter streamer tries to appear in deeper frames, the kind a patient eye might call a hint rather than a claim. The log writes it exactly so. Possible ion feature. Monitor. The wind is not a constant breath. It gusts and slows with the sun's moods, coronal holes, small storms, waves that ripple outward. Spacecraft near Earth report the current flow speed and density, information that helps make sense of what unfolds. When the wind thickens, ion tails sharpen. When it thins, they blur. The telescope cannot touch the wind, but the tails are wind vanes, and the coma is a windsock stitched by sunlight and time. Engineers check for non-gravitational forces, the tiny pushes that show up in motion when gas escapes unevenly. Positions measured to the oxycon stack into a fit. If a jet on the sunlit side is steady, the fit prefers a small acceleration away from the sun. If vents flare and quiet in turns, the residuals can wobble like a heartbeat under a blanket. A code tries the classic coefficients A1, A2, A3. Too many parameters. and the model will pretend to see order in noise. Too few, and it will miss the whisper that is actually there. The balance is simple. Include only what the data ask for. A spectrograph pulls the light into a thin rainbow and listens for ions and molecules. Co, if present, paints a blue sign. CN sings in its own band. Sodium can flash a pale gold along the tail. Tonight, the rainbow's voice is soft but legible. Dust reflects sunlight with a mild red slope. CN makes a modest rise. Co hovers near the noise line, uncertain. None of this is disappointment. The wind is an interrogator with gentle manners. It is patient. It will ask again on another night, closer to the sun, when warmth digs deeper into the skin. Structure matters now more than ever. A porous, fluffy body vents easily. A crusted surface vents through cracks that open and close as heat seeps down and back out. A single deep jet can steer the tail like a quiet rudder. If the traveler is layered dark organics above, cleaner ice below the response can be delayed, like a spring thaw under a hard crust. These are not mysteries pulled from thin air. They are lessons from many comets. The wind teaches the same class to each new student, and the answers change with the student's build. The team adds a simple trick to reading the test. They watch the tail's angle over hours. As the nucleus rotates, a jet's direction swings, and the tail's route can shift like a slow compass needle. Combine that with brightness changes in the comet's inner ring, and a spin period may show itself, a few hours, a dozen, or something in between. If the period locks in, the light curve can marry the wind's pressure to the body's rhythm, a duet that reveals shape, venting pattern, even hints of mass. A sudden brightening would be a different lesson. If pressure cracks a crust, a puff of gas and dust can make the coma surge. The surge fades as grains move outward and gas thins. The profile brightens near the center first, then farther out like a ripple leaving a stone. Tonight, the profile stays calm, no spike, no wave, only the slow arithmetic of steady venting. Calm is useful. Calm tells you the skin holds. Every test needs a control. The team compares these measures to quiet comets at similar distances, to lively ones with rich tails, to visitors that kept their breath tight. Against that backdrop, 3i list looks measured, ordinary in the best way. It follows the rules sunlight writes. Ordinary is not dull. It is a sign that nature repeats, that the chemistry and physics that carve comets here work on travelers from far away too. Radar planners check the geometry once more. If a ping can reach and return, it will ping down distance and size with a bright nail. But radar asks for luck angle, power, time. If the window fails, optical patience will carry the weight. Radio dishes tune to quiet bands, listening for narrow spikes that would suggest an engineered line. They hear only the wide hush of space and the soft crackle of our own star's weather. Silence is not empty. It is a boundary drawn with care. The solar wind test is also a test of us, of the tools we built and the discipline we keep. Flat fields smooth the detector's unevenness. Bias frames subtract the sensor's private noise. Careful sky subtraction removes the night's own glow. When all that is done, what remains is the traveler's voice. It is thin, yes, but honest. It says, I am small. I breathe a little. Light pushes my dust. The wind shapes my veil. My path bends as gravity asks. There is comfort in hearing a consistent story told by different instruments. Short arcs of cloud pass and thin. The dome idles for a minute, then resumes. In a nearby chair, someone flips through old charts of ion tails, some straight. Like spears, some split like forks, some so faint they barely exist. The variety is wide, but the reason is simple. Different wind, different grains, different heat. The traveler fits somewhere along that line, and the job is only to find its place. not to force it into a tale it does not tell. Near midnight, a gentle change appears. The tail's curve tightens by a breath, and the inner coma brightens by a fraction. The spectrograph's blue end shows a slightly stronger ridge where CN speaks. The notes capture it. Minor increase. Consistent with rising activity under higher insulation. The language stays plain. The conclusion is careful. Activity evolving as expected. If the object hit a hard skin or a strained shield, the tail might sag, the lines might stall, the push from light might fail to find dust. None of that happens. The wind asks, and the traveler answers in a tongue we know. Still, the test leaves space for a softer question. If everything looks normal, could the anomaly live in timing alone in when the venting starts and stops, and how the small pushes add up across weeks? A sketch on a pad shows the outbound leg with a slight offset, a line nudged by accumulated breath. Tiny arrows mark each day's push. Summed, they shift the path by a trace that instruments can weigh if the watch stays long enough. The plan writes itself. Keep measuring. Let the ribbon of uncertainty narrow. Listen for a rhythm in the residuals. Dawn hints at the rim of the world. The telescope gathers its final frames. Flats follow, then the shutter closes with a firm, quiet note. Data stream down the fiber like snowmelt filling a slow river. In the control room, the buzz of fans eases and the screens pale to gray. What remains is the record. Images, spectra, times, the tidy words that mean the wind pressed and the traveler gave the expected reply. Outside, the air is cold and thin. The eastern sky holds a band of early color. Above it, the tail is now only an idea in the mind, drawn from plots and patience. Yet the idea feels full, like a sketch you can trust. The sun will rise and fill the valley. The wind will go on invisible but sure, combing the space where the traveler moves. And somewhere on that path, grains will keep sailing, ions will keep whispering, and the small, steady forces will keep writing their quiet edits into the curve. The night closes like a book gently put aside. The lesson lingers. Pressure and light make a patient interrogator, and truth answers in small steps, grain by grain, line by line, hour by hour. The glow above the ridge thins and softens, but in its fading there is a feeling that something precise has been learned, and that inside the hush, a finer question is forming, delicate as dust on sunlight, waiting for the next clear sky to give its shape dot in the endless night. Patterns feel like prophecy. The mind looks up, sees a soft glow cutting the dark, and wants a story to live inside the light. It isn't natural. On beaches, we trace shapes in shells. In clouds, we find faces. In the sky, we draw lines between stars and call them constellations. When a traveler like 3IATLAS passes through, the urge returns. Count the nights, mark the angles, search for a hidden rhythm that explains why it came, where it lingers, and what it might be measuring. The watchers begin with calendars. They set out the dates of discovery, follow-up, and brightening. They lay these marks against other lists, meteor showers, solar storms, the orbits of near-Earth asteroids, the schedules of radar and radio arrays. The lines cross and recross on a quiet wall of screens. A few intersections look tempting. This night overlaps that shower. That geometry matches a clear window for radar. It is easy to feel a tremor of meaning. But the room keeps its voice level. Coincidence is not destiny. The first rule is to test. Testing starts by shuffling. If a pattern is real, it should survive when you slide the whole schedule by a small amount and look again. The code rolls the dates forward and back by hours, then days, each time counting how often the same alignments appear. If a lattice remains, if the same neat crossings hold across many slides, the signal may be more than luck. Mostly, though, the lattice fades. What looked like a net was just a momentary weave of things that go on all the time. showers that repeat, arrays that observe, storms that come and go on the sun's broad breath. Then the team jitters the inputs. They draw new versions of the orbit from the uncertainty ribbon, as many as sand grains in a small cup. Each version tells where the traveler would be on each night if the early measurements leaned a touch one way or the other. For each version, the code checks distances to planets, angles to the sun, alignments with Earth's dark corridors where telescopes rarely look. The counts stack in tall, calm bars. Nothing spikes beyond expectation. The traveler's geometry is interesting because the sky is interesting, not because a hand placed it piece by piece. Human minds are good at seeing order. That gift once kept us alive. Rustle means wind. Different rustle means paw, and paw means move. But the gift also draws order where there is none. A face in bark, a path in scattered stones, a message in random noise. The Watchers name this gently, apophenia, pareidolia, and build habits to keep it from steering the ship. Blind tests, independent checks, thresholds set before the data arrive. The goal is not to strip away wonder. It is to let wonder stand on a foundation that will not slip. The search turns to cadence. If a traveler were measuring, would it pause near certain longitudes? Would its brightness lift at key latitudes, as if scanning belts around the sun? To test this, the team folds time onto angles. They track how the line of sight crosses Earth's orbit, how the object's path maps onto the ecliptic, how often the geometry repeats. A periodogram hums on one screen, a neat graph that spikes when rhythms repeat. The spikes that rise are the ordinary ones, Earth's day and year, the rotation of the dome, the cadence of the survey. The rest is flat. The traveler carries no drumbeat but the drumbeat of the system itself. Meteor calendars add their own quiet thread. Meteor showers are the dust lanes of old comets, their particles tracing long arcs that Earth plows through each year. If 3i Atlas aligned with a known shower in time or space, that might hint at a subtle knot in the sky's web. The comparisons are careful. Radiant directions encounter dates, the speed of the grains that paint quick lines in the night. The logs show no forbiddance crossing. Meteors pour when they always pour. The traveler passes where it was always set to pass. The two acts occur on the same stage, but they do not share a script. Asteroid families sit like quiet villages across the projection, groups with shared elements that reveal an ancient split. The team checks for near passages through those villages. A close brush could pepper the traveler's motion with small kicks, whispering a pattern into the residuals. No brush appears. The path threads between towns, across broad, calm fields. There is a temptation to draw a fortress on the map Earth at the center. Rings of satellites, radars, radio dishes, and telescopes like walls and watchtowers, and then to ask if the traveler's route skims those walls in a clever tour. It is a rich image. It is also a trap. The sky is three-dimensional and wide. Our tools live on one small world and a few high platforms. When the team projects the traveler's path into this fortress view, the line crosses many sectors. Some are well watched, some less so. Some asleep under daylight or weather at any given hour. A pass near a dish can feel like meaning. But when the map includes every dish and every night, the passes are simply many, and the meaning thins to scale. Another test asks about timing against solar weather. Coronal mass ejections, high-speed streams, and magnetic sector boundaries march outward in waves. Could a traveler choose to brighten, to vent, to pivot when those waves pass? The spectra and light curves are laid next to solar wind graphs from spacecraft. When rises coincide, hearts lift. When they do not, shoulders settle. Over weeks, the picture becomes plain. Small brightening follows sunlight as distance shrinks, not solar gusts. The wind sculpts tails, yes, but it does not start the music. Not every pattern is false. Some are the safe, ordinary laws the sky repeats on purpose. Brightness increases as the traveler nears the sun, a law. Tails point away from the sun, another law. Faint pushes from vents tilt the outbound path, a small law with real teeth. These are allowed patterns, expected ones. Forbidden patterns are those that would break the quiet rules. A turn toward a radio array without cause. A pause over the blind spot where no dome can see. A chain of pass-bys that sketch a grid across planetary longitudes. The data show none of these with strength. Still, the watchers do not declare victory over chance. They leave a margin in pencil. If later nights reveal a rhythm that holds against shuffling and jitter, the door is open. For now, the lattice that once glimmered at the edge of sight dissolves when touched. The joy is that the tools worked. The lattice did not survive the tests, and that answer matters. In another corner of the room, a short list grows with deliberate care. These are the signals that would cross the line from coincidence to claim if they ever appeared. A persistent non-gravitational acceleration that changes when Earth looks away, not when sunlight changes, suspicious. A narrow spectral line that repeats at a frequency not tied to known ions or molecules, suspicious. A repeatable pause at fixed solar longitudes across multiple visitors, suspicious. The list is not long because it must be clear. Clarity is a shield against wishful thinking and also a lantern, inviting others to check and argue and improve. The public asks kind questions. Could it be mapping? Could it be testing our radar? The reply stays gentle. Mapping exists in the way every traveler maps, by moving through space, by feeling gravity, by breathing in sunlight and letting go what it cannot keep. If there is a message, it would have to live in timing or in a signal we can check. Timing so far is ordinary. Signals so far are silent. The calm answer is not no, but not seen. That phrasing is honest and light on the heart. In the lab, a new plot appears. Residuals over time, tiny dots above and below a flat line, each dot a breath away from zero. The spread narrows as more nights join the spine. No hidden beat thumps underneath. If a push is there, it is small, and small pushes come from normal things. Jets waking and sleeping as the body turns, dust leaving in clumps. The fit accepts a simple non-gravitational term, nothing more. There is a quiet art to stopping. After enough tests, the team stands back from the screen. A patent did not rise to the level of claim. They do not keep stirring the pot, just to see new shapes in the steam. They write what they found with transparent steps. The code goes into a shared repository. The thresholds are described. The negative results are as clear as the positive ones. This itself is a kind of pattern, an ethic repeated until it becomes instinct. At a window, the night is a deep lake. A meteor writes a neat white stitch and winks out. Off to one side, the traveler is too faint to see unaided, yet in the mind it glows, surrounded by the tools that made it visible: telescopes, spectrographs, algorithms, patient hands. The human fortress is not walls and guns. It is rhythm and sharing. Watch, compare, test, correct, and tell the truth about what holds and what slips away. That rhythm is strong and soft at the same time. If there were a forbidden pattern, a real one, it would stand up to this rhythm. It would not crumble when the dates were shuffled or the orbit was wobbled within its errors. It would not vanish when one survey paused and another continued. It would show itself across instruments and hemispheres, not only in the thin slice of sky that feels most dramatic. The quiet comfort tonight is that nothing like that has appeared. And yet the hunger that looked for a lattice does not go to waste. It becomes attention. It becomes better code. It becomes a checklist for the next visitor and the next. The sky will always be rich in chance alignments, and our minds will always be quick to connect dots. Knowing this is part of knowing the world. It is a hand on the shoulder that says, look with care. The dome's motors soften, and the control room dims as data flows into storage. Plots are saved with plain names. Notes are written in clear lines. No significant correlation with meteor activity. No persistent cadence beyond observational and orbital cycles. No anomalous alignments with ground assets beyond chance. These sentences carry no fireworks. They carry weight, the kind that lets future questions stand higher. Outside, the ridge holds its slow breath. The galaxy arches like a pale bridge from horizon to horizon. A distant dog calls, then falls quiet. Above that hush, the traveler slides on, steady, indifferent to our tiny nets. The mind, which once tried to weave a lattice through its path, now settles into a different pattern, the patient pattern of listening without forcing an answer. And in that patience, something soft but strong is learned. Patterns we can trust are the ones that remain when we tug at them from many sides. Patterns that vanish were only shadows cast by our own lamps. The sky gives both, and the work is to tell them apart. The glow at the edge of night thins toward dawn, and the instruments rest. In the fading, a thought lingers like a small, cool star. The absence of a secret can be a kind of secret to one that keeps the night honest, and leaves the air full and still, as if another, truer shape were waiting just beyond the reach of light. The idea begins as a soft thought at the edge of the dark. What if the traveler is not only drifting, but learning? Not learning like a child at a desk, but like a quiet instrument that gathers and stores shapes, signals, rhythms of a world. The cartographer hypothesis does not claim intention with a raised voice. It whispers, suppose a visitor could make a map. What would it choose to notice, and how would we know? Maps are memories with coordinates. People make them by walking ground, sounding depth, watching currents, and stitching notes into a picture. A cartographer from far away would have no need for oceans or roads, but might still value patterns, radio noise in bands, lines of satellites against the sky, the shimmer of radar that sweeps and returns, the thin ring of debris that circles Earth like a pale belt. If a traveler wanted such a map, it would not need to speak. It could listen and keep listening as it slid through the sunlight. The mind pushes back, kindly. Stones do not choose. Ice does not decide. To imagine a cartographer is to imagine intent, and intent is a heavy word. The rules stay simple. Ideas are welcome. Evidence leads. So the watchers set the idea on a table and turn it in slow light. They ask plain questions anyone can check. If a survey were happening, what traces would it leave in motion, in timing, in the light that returns to us? If no such traces appear, the hypothesis goes back on the shelf, not as a failure, but as a tested thought. Start with motion. A surveyor that prefers certain views might loiter slowing near useful angles, lingering where Earth shines brightest in radio, or holding a line that crosses busy orbital planes again and again. But the measured path of 3I at TLA stays honest to gravity and the small pushes of breath and light. No pauses beyond what sunlight and spin can explain. No careful hovering above the bands where satellites cluster. The curve reads like a river bend, not like a hand tracing a grid. Then the idea turns to timing. A mapper might let its activity pulse when our attention is elsewhere, brightening when major arrays are down for maintenance or when daylight hides the sky above key longitudes. The logs show nothing like that. No pattern that survives shuffling, no rhythm that outlives the tests. Brightness and faint jets rise and fall with the sun's angle, not with our calendars. The silence here is not a door closing. It is a wall that has been knocked with careful knuckles and sounds solid. Light offers other possible clues. A reflective skin, shaped or polished, could could throw glints sharp spikes as it rotates like sunlight on a distant mirror. Glints are not proof by themselves. Ice can glint, rock can glint, tumbling shapes can flash on their own. But repeating glints with precise spacing, persistent across weeks in geometry, would be a strong flag. Telescopes watch the light curve for such crisp beatings. What they find is softer, gentle flicker, if any, likely from irregular shape and dust breathing. No steady metronome in the glow. Spectrum is a quiet test as well. A mapper that wants to read radio noise needs no special chemistry. But a ship that radiates heat or power might show lines or colors that do not fit the simple rainbow of dust and gas. The spectrograph, sensitive and patient, listens for narrow lines and sees none beyond natural bands. In radio, dishes tuned to narrow channels where a deliberate whisper might live. They hear only the wide hush and the sun's weather. Not seen is the measured phrase, and it carries more weight than no, because it leaves room for better ears tomorrow. A true cartographer may choose stealth, the mind argues, and could prefer not to reply at all. Then the test shifts from "did it speak?" to "does it behave in ways that hint at careful sensing?" Here the Earth itself becomes a light, not in color, but in complexity. Our planet hums. Cities and ships, radars and relays, lightning and auroras all make patterns. The faintest of those patterns leak into space and fall off with distance like the scent of a kitchen window carried downwind. If a traveler were listening, it might adjust slightly to keep favorable angles, to reduce glare from the sun, to sample at times when Earth's limb is brightest in radio. Such preferences would bend the path by tiny, measurable amounts, small compared to gravity, but coherent across weeks. The residuals on the orbit plots show no such coherence. What small pushes appear match the way sunlight and breath change with spin and heat. Speculation makes one more turn. Suppose mapping is not the traveler's purpose, but a side effect of simply being a surface in sunlight. Dust released becomes a probe of wind. Tail shape becomes a pointer to magnetic lines. A body's spin becomes a clock that samples geometry in slow, even wedges. In that sense, every comet is a cartographer of the sun's reach, of the solar wind's teeth, of the space where light and charged particles meet. If that is the definition, the hypothesis holds by default, and the tests are the ones we already do. Spectra for chemistry, images for dust, timing for jets, orbit fits for tiny taps. Under those tests, 3i Atlas looks like an ordinary student in a very old class. For the part of the mind that yearns for a stronger mystery, the plan is not to deny the wish, but to give it good tools. Design falsifiable checks. Write them down. Invite the world to look. Here are examples the watchers keep in a small, clean list. If the traveler is mapping radio noise, then coordinated radio arrays should see a moving notch, an absorption or scattering dip that tracks the object's sky position when it crosses bright emitters near Earth's limb. None seen. If it favors views of our satellite belts, optical light curves should show brief, repeatable glints when dense orbital planes align. None above background flash rates. If it navigates to radar beams, precise astrometry should reveal micro changes in path during known high-power transmissions. No correlation beyond chance. If it stores energy or changes skin state, thermal measurements should show a phase lag that does not match ordinary heating and cooling. No peculiar lag in the bands we can measure. Each item is plain. Each has a way to fail. None has survived the night's careful tries. The list remains, ready to be used again if new data arrive or if the sky grows kinder and reveals more. The hypothesis teaches something even when it does not win. It teaches how to ask better questions of the sky. It encourages observers to cross-check with friends far away, to compare notes from optical, radio, and radar without hurry, to publish negative results with the same care as exciting spikes. In this way, the cartographer idea maps us. It locates our habits on a chart of patience, where we share well, where we rush, where we need more steady hands. The human fortress is not a wall of stone. It is attention arranged in time. Telescopes that catch first light. Spectrographs that pry color into pieces. Dishes that listen between storms. A handful of radar pings when geometry allows. Analysts with quiet voices who keep the rhythm steady. If a cartographer passed by, this is what it would find. A species that is learning to hear without shouting, to watch without fear, to tie doubt to method so that doubt becomes a guide and not a fog. Imagine, for a moment, that some ancient traveler truly prefers silence, that it seeks memory, not reply. It would want to leave almost no wake, no engine heat, no bright lines, no perfect cadence in glints, no pause that would make a headline. It would drift like a comet, breathe like a comet, and let gravity draw the letter while it holds the pen steady. It would map by passing through, the way a hand learns a fabric by sliding over it in the dark. If that is the story, then the only honest sign is the one we already have. A path that keeps its quiet, a body that answers the sun in the ordinary way. Silence becomes the method and the message at once. There is humility in that. Not every question yields a dramatic test. Some answers come dressed as ordinary life. The cartographer hypothesis remains on the table, not because the evidence points to it, but because the tests make us better. They make us ask why we believe what we believe. They make us write thresholds before data tempt us with pretty alignments. They make us design instruments that can catch a deliberate whisper if one ever comes. And if a reply were ever wise, what would we send? Not a shout, perhaps, but a promise. To keep our surveys honest. To open our data so others can check. To listen across many bands and share what we learn with care. A good map is a gift you hand forward. So is a method. In the long, gentle night, with a traveler fading someward and then outward again, the best reply may be to become better cartographers ourselves of the sky, of our limits, of the patience that turns noise into meaning. The dome hums. The screen's cool. The ridge holds the night like a bowl. Above, the traveler glides with no ripple beyond the small one's sunlight rights. The hypothesis sits in the mind like a pencil mark on a clean page, simple, light, easy to erase if needed. You breathe and feel the calm shape of the thought. That mapping could happen even in silence. That evidence can be both a presence and an absence. That wonder can sit beside restraint without either one dimming the other. The glow thins, the air goes still. And in that stillness is a sense not of an answer settled, but of a question held gently, as if a hidden outline were waiting to come clear when the night grows a shade deeper and our eyes grow a touch more patient. Silence has a texture in deep night. It is not emptiness. It is a soft weave of faint hums, the whisper of electronics, the low wind against the dome, the far, steady murmur of our star. Into that weave, the watchers lay their instruments like careful hands. If a traveler carries a message, it would need to show itself inside this quiet, not over it. Tonight, the listening begins. On the plain, a radio dish tilts its bright white ear to the sky. Its ribs gleam in starlight. Motors turn, then settle. Receivers cool to a hush. Engineers dial the bandwidth narrower still, until each channel is a razor, thin enough to split a hair of noise. The dish does not look for a song. It looks for a filament, a narrowband tone that stands up against the wide hiss the universe makes. Hydrogen glows broadly. Pulsars tick in patterns. Lightning crackles in bursts. A deliberate whisper would be a thin, steady line that keeps its shape as the sky moves. Far away, another dish watches the same patch, then a third, so that any line seen by one can be checked by the others. This is how the listening stays honest. If a line is local made by a passing satellite, a phone tower stray, a farm's electric fence, the three ears disagree. If a line crosses all three with the right delay and drift, it earns attention. The software that sorts these lines is kind and strict. It expects the signal to slide a little in frequency as Earth turns and orbits, as the traveler's motion shifts the pitch by the Doppler effect. A true line will wander in a way that matches the dance of two moving bodies. A false one will hold still or drift in the wrong direction, as human machines often do. The first scans return with their usual lacework. Thin spikes rise and vanish, a satellite's brief pass, a plane's radar, a distant transmitter brushed by the edge of a lobe. The filters subtract known bands. The list of suspects shrinks. What remains are a few quiet needles. Their pitches slide wrong or repeat the signature of a known constellation of hardware circling. Earth. The logs mark them gently. Terrestrial. Reject. In the corner, a plot of noise temperature is steady and low. The system is listening well. Higher up the spectrum, at microwave frequencies, another receiver watches for transient pings, short, bright dots that could be beacons or glitches. Transients are tricky. Cosmic rays can smack a detector and mimic a dot. The cure is coincidence. Two telescopes see the same dot at the same time, pointed at the same spot. Stronger. One sees it alone, likely a hiccup. Discard. The night yields a few singles, no twins. The report notes no verified transients and keeps the door open with that careful phrase. On another ridge, a smaller array works at different angle, wideband listening. Instead of slicing the sky into hair-thin channels, it takes in a broad swath and searches for patterns hidden in the bath. Spread spectrum signals, if they existed, would hide by design, smearing their power so thin that no single channel stands out. But they leave fingerprints in how the power shifts with time and frequency. The array runs matched filters mathematical combs tuned to likely spreads. The combs pass through the data with quiet patience. They return clean. No hidden nettles catch. The shrug in the control room is not disappointment. It is relief. The air remains honest. Closer to home, a planetary radar team studies geometry. If a ping can reach the traveler and bounce back, even faintly, the echo would nail distance and speed with a single bright nail. Radar is a strong light we shine out. It is not a search for a reply, but the act of sending fills the night with our own noise, so it is done sparingly and with care. Tonight, the angles are unkind. The beam would smear too wide. The return would fall below the floor. The plan is shelved without fuss. Patience is the rule. Optical eyes keep their listening too. They watch for glints, tiny, sharp flashes that could come from flat, reflective faces. Glints are not proof. Ice and rock can flash when they tumble. But a repeating train of glints with precise spacing would be a clue worth chasing. Light curves are measured in long, even runs. The plot lines flatten into calm. A gentle wobble hints at spin. No metronome of sharp spikes appears. The note reads, no periodic specular events. The words feel plain and good. Spectrographs slide to fine grading spacings and test for engineered lines in visible light pins of brightness, too narrow for natural molecules. The rainbow stays a rainbow, with known bands where they should be and voids where they should be. At the blue end, a faint rise of ions murmurs of solar wind. Nothing else stands up. In infrared, a small instrument looks for heat that does not fit passive warming pulses, offsets, patterns that suggest storage and release. The curve follows the sun as distance changes, a sweet, slow rise and fall. No peculiar lag. No extra glow. If the traveler keeps a secret, it is cool and deep. Silence is not a verdict. the watchers remind themselves. It is a measurement. They write that in their notes like a mantra. No confirmed signal detected in search bands. Sensitivity limited by RFI in these ranges. Upper limits established for narrowband flux. The upper limits matter. They are ceilings under which any whisper must hide if it exists at all. With each night, those ceilings drop a little lower. Between scans, the minds drift to how a message could travel without us hearing. There are many ways. A beam could be so tight that only a small slice of space feels it. It could sit outside our bands in a frequency we have not tested or cannot reach. It could be slow a pulse every few days or encoded in polarization, or braided into something we read as noise because our combs do not yet have the right teeth. These too are possibilities, noted not to chase ghosts but to remind the team where their night ends and the unknown begins. The unknown is not a gap of failure. It is a space reserved for the future. There is a kind of signal that lives in timing alone. A traveler could say, here, by being here, by choosing a trajectory that paints a shape across our system. But the trajectory of 3I Atlas remains the quiet work of gravity, with small edits from sunlight and breath. The shape does not draw a letter. It draws a curve. The curve is a sentence in a language the universe speaks every day. If that is the message, then it is a message about shared rules. Rules can be a kind of comfort. They mean we are reading the same book. Public ears join the night. Amateur dishes listen where they can. A small backyard radio set records spectra and posts them online. There is pride in that, a warm kind that says listening is not owned by any one place. A classroom leaves a receiver on overnight and wakes to a page of lines. A teacher explains Doppler shift with a hand-drawn wave. Somewhere, a student decides to study antennas. The traveler becomes a lesson, not by speaking, but by being a reason to build quiet habits. The human ear has its own way to hear silence. On a break, someone steps outside and stands in the cold. The dome hums behind. The stars are steady pinpricks. The air is thin enough to taste. A distant dog barks once, then settles. In that moment, the absence of a shout from the sky feels like a balance restored. If there is a message somewhere, it can wait. We will be here, and the sky will be here, and the interval between them is not empty, but full of steady laws. Back inside, another run begins. The radio dish slews to a new declination. The waterfall display, the plot of frequency against time, scrolls its blue and green. A thin ray rises, then falls with the wrong signature. A satellite crossing the edge. The filter nods and closes. The display smooths. Hours pass in low light. Coffee cools. The log grows another line. Nothing extraordinary happens, and that is the ordinary miracle of long work. Instruments do what they were made to do. People give them patience. The night repays patience with boundaries we can trust. Engineers talk quietly about sensitivity. A tenfold improvement with lower ceilings. Larger dishes, cleaner front ends. New algorithms that learn the shape of our own noise and set it aside. These are projects with calendars that stretch beyond this traveler's visit. The discussion is sober and hopeful at once. Every advance shrinks the space where a whisper could hide, and that is as much a gift as any shout would be. In a corner, a small screen shows an experiment aimed at another kind of quiet. Planetary radar listening without transmitting, using the sun as a floodlight and the traveler as a reflector. The method is cruelly hard. The sun's light is everywhere. The echo from a small body is faint and spread. But with enough baseline between listeners, tiny correlations can tease a pattern out of the glare. Tonight, the correlations refuse to rise. The method is young. No one minds. The attempt teaches design and humility, both of which make the next attempt better. Near dawn, optical watchers take one last long exposure, seeking any unexpected flare. The frame returns clean, coma steady, tail gently combed, background smooth. The spectrograph closes its slit with a soft click. The radio sets finish their scans and write their files to quiet disks. A set of plots on the largest screen shows upper limits laid like steps. Here is how quiet the traveler is, if it is speaking in these ways. The steps descend from night to night. The staircase is not glamorous, but it is sturdy. Silence, held long enough, turns into knowledge. It tells us that if a message exists, it is not easy, not bright, not in the place we checked. It tells us that nature's own sounds, hydrogen, pulsars, lightning, auroras, live in the same room and demand respect. It tells us that our machines are loud and clever and must be tamed before any distant whisper can be trusted. These are not small things. They are the groundwork of any hearing worth the name. The dome begins to close. The last fan slows. The room's glow fades from blue to gray. Outside, the horizon lifts a pale ribbon. The traveler is already a mental mark, not a point one can see. Yet the listening lingers like a low note, steady in the chest. No confirmed signal. No engineered line. No narrow-band thread weaving through the hiss. Only the honest chorus of the sky and the soft rush of our own world's breath. If there is a message, it might be this: that the universe keeps its voice in the rules it follows. That silence is not neglect, but space given to us to learn. The instruments rest. The records wait. The thresholds will be drawn again when night returns. In the calm between, one can stand very still and hear the faintest weave of sounds, the planets hum, the stars sigh, the quiet mind. The silence deepens, yet hidden in that silence is something waiting to be understood, a presence without a name. As gentle as starlight, as patient as time, holding its shape just beyond the edge of hearing. The fortress is not made of stone. It is made of attention. In quiet rooms across the world, screens glow soft blue and people lean in. They are not soldiers at a wall. They are watchers at windows, listening to a sky that never sleeps. The tools are simple to name and deep to use. Telescopes that sweep the dark. Cameras that drink starlight. Spectrographs that pull color into clues. Models that turn numbers into paths. Together, they form a net, loose and patient, thrown again and again across the night. A survey dome opens on a ridge. Another turns in desert air that smells of dust and cold. A third stands on an island where waves speak up from the rocks below. Their cadence is steady. Field, exposure, move. Field, exposure, move. This rhythm is the heartbeat of the human fortress. It catches asteroids as they step between stars. It catches comets as they bloom. It catches small, bright surprises that flare and fade before anyone can blink twice. The fortress does not tighten its jaw. It takes a breath and keeps time. Catalogs are the fortress's memory. Rows of objects, each with positions and brightness, grow like rings in a tree. New points are compared to old lists. If a light moves, it becomes a track. If a track returns, it becomes a known path with a name. From these names, a picture of the sky's traffic forms. Families of rocks, long-period comets, near-Earth neighbors that wander close every few years. None of this is glamorous. All of it is rescue in slow motion, because warning is a kind of rescue, and warning comes from knowing. Inside the rooms, voices are low and specific. Seeing is 2 arcseconds. Sky brightening from the east. Object at 19 magnitude. Rate consistent. No one needs to raise a tone. When an alert deserves speed, the systems speak for them automated messages that wake other telescopes. Schedules that jump, follow-up requests that cross oceans on fiber lines. In minutes, glass on another mountain turns to look. The fortress is not one place. It is a chain that wraps the Earth in quiet cooperation. Tracking is the fortress's pulse. With 3 nights of points, an orbit stands. With 5, it strengthens. With 10, it holds like a beam set with care. The work is shared because the planet turns and weather forgets our plans. When clouds stand over one site, another site sees. When day ends a run in Chile, night begins the same run in Hawaii. This handoff is the fortress's grace, a relay that loses no baton. Defense is also models, and the models are calm. They take in a path and ask a simple, hard question. Where will this traveler be next year, in 10, in 100? If the ribbon of uncertainty brushes Earth, the code refines and refines again. It is not a scene from a film with flashing red lights. It is math written with soft pencils and erased cleanly when better numbers arrive. People outside may imagine panic. People inside practice clarity. They know that fear is fog. The cure is detail. In one lab, a team studies impact energy the way builders study wind loads on a bridge. What matters most is size, speed, and angle. A small rock can light the sky and shake windows. A larger one can throw dust into air and darken fields for a season. None of these truths are shouted. They are placed gently on a table and measured, so that choices later can be real. The fortress is not a promise that nothing will ever fall. It is a promise to look, to share, and to act early if action is needed. Action, when it is more than watching, lives in careful tests. Engineers design kinetic impactors, machines that can nudge a small body by striking it at speed. Others study the way sunlight can be turned into a push if a surface is brightened or shaded just so. These ideas are slow to build and slow to test. They must be, because the sky does not forgive sloppy work. The mood is practical. The language is plain. Change in period measured. Momentum transfer estimated. Progress comes in inches. Inches matter. But the fortress is not only hardware and code. It is also people who carry the weight of the watch. A coordinator working through the night checks reports from telescopes in 3 time zones, rubs eyes, and sends one more follow-up request with a please. That means this helps all of us. A student new to the field spends a week cleaning calibration frames so the science image will be honest. A teacher in a small town sets up a backyard telescope with a class and submits a position that fits the curve. And a quiet cheer goes up on a mailing list with 50 countries on it. The fortress grows a little stronger in that moment, not in steel, but in spirit. The public leans toward the windows too. A headline says, "Interstellar Visitor," and people step outside to look, even if they know they cannot see the point with their own eyes. They share times and places in comments. Karachi after midnight, Berlin in a shy dawn, Santiago under clear air. These notes do not change in orbit. They change something else. They remind the watchers that they are not alone. A fortress meant to protect home must remember home is listening. Kindness in words matters. In control rooms, empathy walks beside logic. A lead astronomer notices a young operator's hands and says, "Take a break. I've got this exposure." An engineer sets an alert to ping a colleague only if a threshold is truly crossed, so that sleep can be sleep. A project manager remembers to plan for clouds and power cuts, for family days and long weekends, so that the staff can last not a day but a decade. The fortress is only as strong as the people who keep it, and people are strongest when cared for. Between tasks, someone opens a blind slat and lets the night in. It is a simple scene, Milky Way like a pale drip brush, Orion at the rim, a plane's slow flash near the horizon. The sight resets the room. This is why the fortress exists, not to build fear around the world, but to keep wonder safe inside it. The watchers return to their keys with a softened brow. The systems practice failure the way musicians practice scales. A server dies in rehearsal so that it will not die in the concert. A telescope runs on backup power for a night to make sure the hiccup is as small as a blink. A data path is cut on purpose, and another path learns to carry the flow. These drills become muscle memory. When something real fails, no one flails. The fortress steadies itself and keeps the watch. Across continents, data centers hum like deep bees. They store not just tonight's frames, but decades of night star fields. Asteroid paths, comet comas, transients that flared and were gone. Algorithms that were thin saplings years ago now stand like trees. Their branches full of patterns learned the honest way, slowly, with labels checked by kind hands. Machine learning joins human learning, not as a replacement, but as a helper that never tires. When a new point appears, the system whispers, "I've seen this shape before," and a person answers, "Show me," and decides. The fortress has neighbors. Weather satellites sweep clouds. Communication constellations draw bright lines that sometimes cross a frame. Farmers track drought from above. Mariners read waves. Every orbit brings both noise and help. So watchers speak with other watchers. Schedules shift a bit to keep star trails clean. Filters adjust to dodge a band. Courtesy is a tool. It keeps the sky shared. And in the middle of all this standing guard, there is still the small, private feeling of awe. A scientist steps outside between exposures, looks up, and says nothing because the words would splash on something that should stay still. A parent at a kitchen sink rinses a cup and pauses at a bright plant hanging over the neighbor's roof. A child on a bus window traces a crooked constellation with a fingertip. The fortress holds space for these moments by being boring in the best way, reliable. When worries rise, what if we miss one? What if the next is bigger? The answer is the same as always. Keep measuring. Expand coverage. Share faster. Tell the truth plainly. No one person holds the wall. Many hands do, and they are spread across mountains and valleys. Cities and islands, rooms where languages mix, but the math is the same. The net tightens one knot at a time. By the end of the night, the logs show another thin trail added to the sky's ledger. The object is faint. The numbers are clear. The orbit narrows. The ribbon of maybe shrinks. The traveler that tested the watch has taught nothing dramatic and everything important. That the gears turn, that the chain of trust holds, that the hero of this story is a practice, not a person. Dawn lays a soft bar of color on the eastern clouds. Domes close like eyes finishing a long blinking thought. Fans wind down. The rooms grow quiet and ordinary. On the servers, backups take over. In inboxes, thank yous arrive from far away, short and kind. People step outside, pull jackets tighter, and look once more before the light washes the stars away. The fortress does not end with the sunrise. It moves into day meetings to plan cadence, code to patch a patient bug, mirrors to clean, a small grant to write for a new camera that sees a little deeper. It is work that builds not drama but steadiness. And in that steadiness lives a promise as soft as a breath. We will keep watch, we will share what we see. And in the cradle of silence we will hold both caution and wonder with the same gentle hands. Above, the last pale star fades, but in its fading it leaves a fullness in the air. As if the quiet sky had set down a secret near our door and walked on, trusting we would find it when we looked with care. The night is clear enough to hear your own breath. Stars sit in their places like seeds pressed into dark soil. Somewhere beyond the ridge, the ocean sighs. High above, three-eyed ZTLS is only a pale ember, a soft glow drawn thin across the black. It does not roar. It does not demand. It simply moves, and in its moving the watchers look for hints, small omens that might say more than they seem. A telescope takes the first exposure after midnight. The The dome is a quiet shell. The air inside smells faintly of cold metal and dust. The image arrives with a whisper of fans. Stars are sharp points. The traveler is a slightly swollen dot, wrapped in a gentle veil of coma. Photometry routines begin their work, drawing circles around the core, measuring brightness in rings, the way a finger might feel a ripple spreading from a drop. The numbers look steady. Then, in the second exposure, the central ring brightens by a sliver. Not a flare, a nudge, a breath, the kind of change that makes nobody shout and everyone sit up. To be seeing, someone says a note for the air's steadiness. The log records it. A third exposure follows. The inner coma holds the extra light. The outer rings stay calm. That profile is interesting. A small exhale from the warmest skin rather than a wind change or a noise spike. The spectrograph, already cooling, swings in. Its narrow slit takes a sip from the core and splits it into a thin rainbow. The known bands are their CN's shy rise. The dust's red slope more or less as before, but the tiny bump adds a touch above last hour's level. The word omen is not spoken. The team prefers feature, deviation, candidate. Yet in the room, the feeling is the same as hearing a faint creak in a quiet house. It might be the wood settling. It might be something else. The test is simple. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Patience is the first instrument. Across the valley, another telescope repeats the cadence in a different filter. If the small rise is dust, the color will lean warm. If it is gas, the blue bands will lift first. The results hint at dust. The number called AF-rho, a simple measure for dust production, ticks upward by a few percent. Still small. Still real. The record adds a line and a tiny star. Watch. Astrometry teams, those who measure position with the care of clockmakers, check their points. The traveler's path is the same quiet curve it was yesterday, but the residuals wobble a hair, a breath on the line. Could this be a jet's little push? Could it be atmosphere, guiding corrections, or a faint bias in the star catalog? Error bars widen, then narrow again as more frames join the fit. The wobble settles close to zero. Not a kink, then. Not tonight. The path still speaks gravity's soft grammar. Meteor observers, watching their own sky, notice a thread that was not on last year's calendar. An extra stitch of light that slices the dark on a path that brushes the traveler's track. Is it connected? Or just coincidence, the kind the sky gives freely? The radiance of those meteors do not point back to 3I-ATLAS. They match a known Meyer stream, thin as a hair, that returns each year with little fanfare. The connection goes into the no pile, not with disappointment but with relief. False links are shadows cast by our own lamps. Closer to the slit, the spectrograph tries a long exposure on the tail's root. Blue light deepens. A hint of ion glowco perhaps leans up from the noise. It is the kind of sign that appears, disappears, then appears again, like a shy animal stepping in and out of brush. The team notes it and does not claim it. 2 more long frames, 2 more hints. Low confidence. The running truth remains. Dust leads. Ions whisper. The watcher at the keyboard pulls up a plot of brightness over the night points like grains of salt scattered on a line. A slow wave emerges with a period of a few hours. It could be spin, the nucleus turning, one side venting a touch more than the other. The wave is small but sweet, a lullaby pulse, regular enough to make the mind hum along. If the period holds tomorrow and the next day, the fit will grow teeth. For now, it is a gentle idea with a friendly face. Outside, the Milky Way is a pale ribbon, a nebula-sprinkled road running far beyond this ridge and this valley. In that road live star nurseries, open clusters, cold knots of dust where future suns sleep. Somewhere beyond those, exoplanets circle in quiet, under light that never reaches us. The traveler has seen lanes like these, perhaps even left a family of its own far behind. That thought is not a theory to test. It is a feeling to hold. It makes the small signs tonight feel like notes in a larger song. The camera takes a deep frame while a passing breeze brushes the dome. On the screen, the dust tail bends a hair more than before, curving like a brushstroke in thin paint. Radiation pressure is a slow artist. The arc fits what light does to grains of different sizes. If there is a jet, it is subtle. Its push spread by spin and time. A thin streamer tries to stand straight within the curve. The word possible is used again, even though everyone wishes for clear. Wishes stay out of logs. Only numbers go in. In the next hour, the inner coma dims back by the same small amount it rose. This is good news, repeatable behavior, not a glitch. Heat digs in. Gas turns to fog. Dust lifts and falls away. The traveler breathes like a creature that does not hurry. If there is an omen in this, it is an omen of patience. Change comes in teaspoons, not buckets. A student on the night shift checks flat fields and bias frames, the quiet housekeeping that makes the science honest. The flats look clean. The bias is calm. Instrument ghosts, reflections from bright stars, are not near the object. The rise in brightness belongs to the sky, not to the machine. Small sighs of satisfaction move around the room. It feels good to remove doubt with simple care. Clouds feather the horizon. For 10 minutes, stars soften. The brightness curve wobbles and is thrown away. This, too, is the rhythm, except only what endures across weather's small moods. When the air clears, the curve returns to its calm, like a lake smoothing after a skip of wind. Somewhere, an email pings. A small observatory farther west confirms a similar low pulse in the light, a few hours behind due to longitude. Their filters are not the same, but the trend leans in the same direction. Shared data turn a hint into a pattern. It is not a loud pattern, not the kind that earns headlines. It is the kind that earns trust. An hour before dawn, the brightness tilts upward again, not as much as before, but enough to notice. If this is spin, the period might be near the length of the night itself. The team scribbles a circle on a notepad, marks a small fan on one side to stand for a vent, and draws an arrow to show the axis. A simple sketch, and yet it carries the warmth of understanding. We may be seeing a face turn. In a side window, a tiny graph watches for non-gravitational acceleration, the small push from jets that a precise orbit can feel. The numbers flirt with significance, then fall back. It may take many nights to learn if sunlight's breath is nudging the path by a measurable hair. The room is content to wait. The path's truth is not a butterfly to be grabbed. It is a cat that comes when the room is quiet. There is talk of a kink someone thought they saw, a small bend that felt like a finger touching the line. The refit washes it away. Weighted properly, with outliers in their proper place, the curve returns to smooth. It is a reminder to the heart. Be careful with words when graphs are young. A radio set down the road listens for narrowband whispers while the optical work goes on. Its plots look like soft rain on a windshield, streaks of interference sliding down. Filters carve the rain away. Underneath, there is only the wide hush of sky and a few stubborn lines that belong to human machines. No special thread appears from the traveler's patch tonight. Quiet remains. By now, the spectrograph's rainbow is a row of small hills and gentle valleys. The carbon bands are steady. CN hums a little louder than last week, which fits the distance and the slight warming deep down. If there is a surprise, it is that nothing refuses the rulebook. That can be a surprise when minds were ready for a riddle. There is comfort in rules holding, comfort without boredom. The way a river brings water every day, and it is always a miracle if you are thirsty. The final sequence begins, a run of images and one more spectrum, followed by flats taken against a brightening sky. The comet's profile is copied into a notebook by hand, not because it must be, but because the act fixes it in the mind. Near center rise. Gentle fall. Wings quiet. Tail curve a touch sharper than at dusk. A simple tune hummed twice. Dawn stains the eastern edge of the world. The dome starts to close, panels meeting with soft thunks that sound like lids on long, warm pots. Fans slow. A kettle clicks in the corner. Someone pours tea. The talk is light, and the notes are careful. Minor inner coma brightening, repeatable. Possible ion hint near noise floor. Dust tail curvature, consistent with increased small grain release. No significant trajectory deviation. Residuals random. Ordinary sentences that hold small wonders. On the ridge, the air sharpens with the first blue of day. The traveler is gone to the naked eye and stays only in the mind, a moving dot wrapped in a thin veil. If omens gathered, they were gentle. A small rise, a steady pulse, a tail that tightened by a breath, a rainbow that lifted its low hills by a finger's width. They do not promise doom or magic. They promise that matter responds to light, that heat writes truth on skin. That timing can tell a story if you sit with it long enough. You stand at the doorway and take in the color coming up from the horizon. The valley holds its hush. A bird tries one note and then another. The machines behind you rest with a satisfied hum. Somewhere above the pale sky, the traveler keeps moving on its measured road, the same road it held before anyone knew its name. In the calm, it leaves. Behind, the small signs feel like footprints in dew clear for a moment, then fading with the sun, yet real enough that you remember where they were. The glow softens and the silence feels full, as if the night had set a tiny clue on the windowsill and stepped away, trusting that when darkness returns and eyes adjust, the shape waiting in that quiet will be ready to be seen. The sun rises inside, space long before dawn reaches Earth. Light thickens. Heat gathers. The wind from our star strengthens like a slow tide. Into this bright river, the traveler curves. 3-1, Atlas has been a soft ember for weeks, a drifting shadow brushed by starlight. But now it approaches perihelion, the closest point in its journey, the moment when distance turns and truth comes out in vapor. The telescopes are ready. Domes open like careful lids. Mirrors breathe cold air. Mounts take a steady stance as if bracing for a gentle wave. On screens, the predicted path is a fine arc, the trajectory drawn by gravity and edited by breath. The numbers look simple. Time, distance, speed, angle. The feeling is not simple at all. Perihelion is a test, a quiet trial where sunlight writes on skin and the script becomes visible to anyone with patient eyes. Near the center of the field, the coma brightens with a pale pulse. What was once a faint glow now swells, round and soft, like frost blooming on glass. Jets wake where the warmth finds its first easy routes through cracks, along old seams, under thin crust that gives way with a sigh. The spectrograph opens its narrow slit and drinks the light. The rainbow is still a rainbow, but its hills rise higher. CN hums louder. Carbon bands step up. A gold taste of sodium traces the tail in faint lines. Dust color leans warmer, a sign that small grains are lifting and fresh. Numbers and riding the push of radiation away from the sun. The coma is not a fog without shape. It is a map painted by vents. Close to the nucleus, the light sharpens. Farther out, it smooths. In that smoothness, a structure appears, cones and fans where jets spread, dim lanes where the surface keeps still. The inner profile, measured ring by ring, tells a simple story. Increased outflow, steady over an hour. Then a modest rise that feels like a breath caught and released. The watchers do not shout. They underline the line and mark the time. Perihelion turns action into a slow poem. Dust draws its own lines. The tail bends like a brushstroke in a thin wash, curving under sunlight's nudge. Threads appear within it, some straighter, some curved, a small braid where grains of different sizes take different roads. The anti-solar line points the way ions would go. A faint, straight streamer tries to live there, as if the solar wind were combing the hairs of the coma. In longer exposures, the straight piece holds, thin but consistent, a ghostly ruler laid across the arc. What was a hint weeks ago is now a fact that stands on its own legs. Perihelion is warmth and pressure, but it is also rhythm. The light curve, tracked hour by hour, shows a soft wave. Up, down, up again. A cycle that matches the spin found on quieter nights. As the nucleus turns, different faces meet the sun. A vent in shadow goes still. A vent in light wakes. The tail's route shifts by a breath like a compass needle settling. When two periods line up, the spin and the orbital sweep, a pattern may beat against the instruments, like a heart under a blanket. The team fits the timing. The match is plain and kind. Heat reaches deeper. Fresh ice, untouched for ages, meets sunlight and becomes air. That air, thin as a whisper on a mountain, lifts dust and drifts into the dark. If the body carries layers dark organics outside, sweeter ice within, then the response lags, not because the traveler refuses, but because warmth needs paths to move. In that lag live brief surprises, small surges after the closest approach, faint flares as if a pocket opened and closed. The spectrograph catches one. The CN ridge rises for 20 minutes and eases back, the dust slope thickening a finger's width. Nothing wild. Everything honest. Brightness pulls cameras from hills and deserts and islands into a single chorus. Across the world, telescopes of many sizes trace the same swell with different eyes. Some see in blue and catch ions. Some see in red and weigh dust. A few reach to infrared, where heat tells whether grains are large and slow to cool or fine and quick to fade. The plots stack like thin panes of glass. Through them, one can see the traveler's behavior in layers. Gas rising here, dust drifting there, heat answering at a steady pace. Perihelion has a voice, but it speaks in harmony, not in sudden shouts. Non-gravitational forces, small before, become measurable now, if only by a hair. The orbit fit, those tidy elements that act like a driver's license, accepts a slight tap away from the sun. The classic one term the comets earn when jets favor the warm face. The residuals, once flat, lean a little with a period that lines up with the spin. The code includes what the data ask for and nothing more. That restraint is its own kind of music. Somewhere, a radar team checks the window one last time. Geometry remains unkind. The beam would spread, the echo would drown. They return to optical patience without regret. Radio dishes listen for narrowband needles, but hear only the honest hiss of space. Silence during perihelion feels different, somehow not empty, but full of natural sound. Ions, dust, the sun's wind, the planet's own radio voice sliding down the band like rain. The logs keep their careful phrases. No confirmed engineered lines. Upper limits improved by a factor of 2. Environment consistent with solar wind conditions. The question of endurance arrives on soft feet. Some comets do not like heat. They fragment into swarms of pebbles and dust, the nucleus splitting along old scars. The coma bright for a day, and then thin as if a candle were blown out. Others hold together, their seams strong, their vents many but modest. Which kind is this? The images say the body is steady. No fresh pieces peel away. The coma, though larger, keeps its roundness. The tail grows, but does not fray into tattered ribbons. If there is a fracture, it is too small for these eyes. Endurance looks like design, but in space, strong ice and compact rock can look like design too. The watchers hold the thought gently and let it pass. Beyond the dome, the Milky Way drapes like a pale river. In that river lie nebulae that make new stars, and in the shadows around those stars, exoplanets that circle in quiet. The traveler once belonged to another river, another star's family where gravity taught it to move. That distant school left marks, inclination, speed, a taste in the spectrum that matches simple, shared recipes. Perihelion does not erase those marks. It makes them brighter, like chalk wet with rain. Flats and biases, those humble frames that keep the detector honest, matter most when the scene is changing. The team checks them with careful eyes, because a false surge made by an instrument would be worse than a missed flare. Everything is clean. The rise you see is the rise that is there. Confidence grows not from drama, but from housekeeping. Heat writes on shape as well as light. If vents cluster, they can act like tiny thrusters, aligning along a line that connects warmth and spin. Over days, the outbound asymptote, the line that marks the forever direction, may tilt by a fraction of a degree. That fraction is a sentence. It says something about mass, size, porosity, the way the surface fails or holds. No single mind can read that sentence completely. The perihelion is the moment the ink touches paper. The first letters curve into view. Peak comes without fanfare. The object reaches its nearest point to the sun as a number in a column, and the sky looks the same to the eye. But the plots feel it. Brightness stops rising and sits level on its little shelf. The tail's curve holds steady. The straight streamer keeps its thin discipline. Production rates plateau. The room is calm. The voices remain low. A peak that is quiet is the best kind. No break, no sudden wake, just a traveler doing what? The sun asks and nothing more. If there is a danger, it is subtle. The mind wants to read intention into grace. A steady body with modest jets can look like a plan. A fragile body that crumbles can look like a warning. The lesson, spoken softly, is that behavior is not motive. It is structure under heat, chemistry under light, motion under gravity. When those rules hold through perihelion, trust grows. The fortress of Earth is stronger, not because the visitor did or did not endure, but because the watching worked, the cadence, the subtraction, the spectrograph's thin song, the shared plots that turn many eyes into one clear sight. After the turn, outward begins. The geometry relaxes. Sunlight lessens. Flow slows. Yet something sweet often appears here, a delayed rise, a second wind as deep ice finally reaches the temperature of change. Hours after perihelion, the inner profile lifts again by a hair. The rainbow answers with a slightly stronger lip on the CN hill. Dust color shifts a little warmer, as if finer grains are now afloat. It is the signature of layers and time, a body that saved a small response for after the closest brush. The note in the log is simple, post-perihelion uptick, consistent with thermal lag. Night runs on. A long exposure reaches deeper down the tail, where the straight piece fades into murk. A careful filter finds it again and draws a thin, pale line along the anti-solar direction. The solar wind has held its speed. The traveler has held its reply. In the inner coma, fans spread like soft, luminous fronds. A faint hollow appears where gas rushes outward faster than dust can fill. These are details that make a sketch into a portrait. The last hour feels like a sigh held and released. The team takes the final sequence images, spectra, one more light curve, and then turns to flats while the horizon hints at morning. The data move like a quiet river across fiber and into storage. A draft summary writes itself with calm hands. Perihelion passage observed. Coma brightening moderate and symmetric. Ion features present but weak. Dust production increased. AF row within expected range. Non-gravitational term detected at low significance. Behavior consistent with sunward outflow. No fragmentation signatures. Post-perihelion thermal lag indicated. Outside, the ridge holds a thin band of color where night loosens. Air smells faintly of rock cooling. Above the paling east, the traveler is there, though no unaided eye will find it. Curving outward along the open road, its orbit always promised. The moment has passed and also not passed. Perihelion is an instant on paper and a soft span in life. What matters is the line it leaves in us. That heat told the truth, that patience found it. That small forces added across hours can bend a forever line by a measurable hair. You can stand with your hand on the dome's cool skin and feel nothing but metal. Still, the mind holds a warmth, a sense that a page has been turned and the ink is dry. The traveler's glow is already thinning. The tale will fade. The number by its name will remain in a ledger that adds new lines each year. Yet in this quiet, after the closest pass, the air seems full instead of empty, as if the space around us had been gently combed. And in the smooth furrows left behind, a question rests soft, precise, unhurried, waiting for anyone who looks up to feel it. In the wake of light and breath, what trace of this passage will we keep? And what will it keep of us as it goes on into the long, cool dark? Reply does not have to be a shout. It can be a promise spoken in the quiet, steady, simple, shared. The traveler has curved past the sun and is heading out along its long road, leaving a thin line of dust and a memory of light. In the hush that follows, the question remains like a soft ember. If this is a messenger, what do we send back? We begin with a pledge to keep watch. Telescopes already sweep the sky, but our reply can widen the net and soften its mesh. More stations spread across longitudes and latitudes, each with modest mirrors and patient hearts. A cadence that covers gaps where darkness and weather once hid small things. Cameras with deeper wells, sensors cooled a bit more. Software that learns to tell true motion from noise without raising its voice. None of this is glamorous. All of it is reply. Data like water, not walls. That is another line in the promise. When an object appears, measurements flow into a shared river, timestamps, positions, colors, curves. The river should run fast enough that a watcher on another mountain can drink from it before the night grows old. Open formats, tidy logs, clear flags for what is certain and what is guess. A simple habit post quickly. Correct gently turns many small rooms into one quiet hall where the sky speaks and all can hear. Spectrographs are our ears for color. We reply by tuning them with care. Wider slits under faint light. Finer gratings when brightness allows. Calibration lamps checked as often as we check our own breath. A library of reference spectra shared without fuss, so that a rise in one valley or a dip on one ridge can be recognized across continents. If a traveler's breath changes, we will know not because one place said so, but because many places hummed the same note. Pulsar timing and radio quiet zones enter the reply too. The galaxy ticks in millisecond beats from spinning stars. Those ticks make a background clock so steady it can hear the slow tug of space itself. In our reply, we keep those clocks clean. We guard the quiet valleys where dishes listen. We shield them with simple kindness. Planned radio silence when the sky asks for it. Filters that keep our loudest tools from bleeding into every band. Listening is not only building big ears. It is also teaching the world to whisper near the ears we already have. Redundancy is not waste. It is care. 2 telescopes measure the same field. 2 teams reduce the same spectra with different code. 2 archives store the same frames in different towns. When one link fails, the reply does not fall silent. It steps sideways, breathes, and continues. In the story of space, wrong alarms are cured by overlap and patience. Right alarms are confirmed by them. Our reply is to double the paths without doubling the drama. We promise education that lasts longer than a headline. A student learns to take flats and bias frames, to label files in a way that a stranger can love. A teacher shows how to plot a light curve and mark uncertainties like handrails along a trail. A child stands under a sky app and traces a path with a fingertip, then writes the time in a notebook and whispers, "I saw it." Our reply is a culture that passes down not just facts, but habits, clean work, slow thought, open hands. Preparedness without panic lives in small drills. Once a month, the network pretends a faint object has a chance of crossing Earth's lane. Telescopes pivot. Models run. Messages go out with clear words. At the end, the drill is folded away with notes on what felt clumsy and what felt smooth. The next month, the same drill runs with one step better. In this way, the fortress learns to move like water rather than stone. Engineers join the reply with devices made for the long game. A small impactor tested on a harmless target. A gentle tug that uses sunlight itself by laying reflective cloth where darkness once drank heat. These are not weapons. They are tools, and their power is in timing and honesty. We will never meet most travelers up close. But for the few that need a nudge, we build the hand that nudges and the eyes that guide it, years before the need arrives. Policy is part of the reply, though it does not glow like a comet tail. Agreements that say, share first, credit fairly. Lines that protect listening bands the way parks protect rivers. A common calendar for maintenance so that not every ear sleeps on the same night. The words are plain and the signature's small, but the effect is large. Trust becomes a system, not a mood. We answer also with humility. The traveler taught by not performing a miracle. It followed the rules of gravity and light and heat. That lesson is itself a message. The universe is knowable when we are patient. So our reply accepts limits. We say, not seen when the radio is quiet, below threshold when a line is too faint. We put error bars around our hopes. In doing so, we tell future minds exactly where to look harder. Art and story enter in a softer thread. A sketch of the tail pinned on a lab cork board. A lullaby about a comet sung to a small child who asks why the night has freckles. A mural on a school wall where a dome opens into stars. These do not push or pull a traveler. They lift the eyes that will someday measure one. Our reply becomes a human thing, not only a technical one. The public's part is simple and strong. People keep a calendar of the sky on their phones and hearts. They step outside when a notice says, "Look up." There is something faint but lovely near the horizon. They post times and places: midnight in Karachi, afternoon in Santiago, a clear hour between clouds in Kyoto. The crowd becomes a map of the earth, listening back. In that map, the watchers feel less alone. We answer with careful language. No fear bait. No fear bait. No blare. Plain words. We found this object. Here is how it moves. Here is what we know and what we don't. Here's what we're doing next. Calm speech is a soft light. It lets everyone in the room see without squinting. It saves energy for the long watch. Instruments improve a little, then a little more. A mirror's coating is renewed. A mount moves with one less jitter. A spectrograph's blue end gains a touch of sensitivity. Software learns to flag a subtle push that once hid in the noise. Each change is small. Together they are a stair. Our reply is to keep climbing, step by step, without pretending the stair ends. We remember that interstellar also means shared. The materials that built the traveler ice, rock, simple molecules, are the same that built us. We reply by treating them with respect. When we gather dust from a comet tail or scoop grains from a near-Earth rock, we share the samples and the stories. We place bits of the sky in museums and classrooms where a hand can hover above a glass case and feel, somehow, the coolness of time. Above all, we promise kindness to the future. We will store our records in forms that last. We will write down the meanings of our file names and the quirks of our instruments. We will keep weather logs and calibration notes because someday someone will need to know why a night was bright or a line was bent. Our reply is a gift box labeled clearly, tied with a ribbon of care. If the traveler was a messenger, its message may have been this: that the universe crosses itself in quiet ways, that patience sees farther than fear, that listening is a kind of strength. Our answer is not a beam into the dark. It is a way of living under the dark, with lights arranged just so observatories sharing, radios resting when they must, models written in clean code, hands ready to help across oceans and languages. The night outside is ordinary again, stars like grains of salt on black cloth, a thin breeze, a dome cooling with a soft crackle. Somewhere out there, 3i, Atlas moves on, already smaller to our eyes, already a line in a ledger. But the reply we send does not fade with it. It remains in routines and friendships, in charts and quiet rooms, in the habit of standing at a doorway before sleep and looking up for one slow breath. And as you stand there, the sky seems to lean close, not louder, only nearer, holding the same old secrets with the same patient hands. The promise we made hums low and warm, and the darkness feels full instead of empty, as if a gentle answer had been placed within reach and was waiting, steady and unhurried, to be understood. Night draws a soft curtain over the world, and the sky, patient as always, takes its place above roofs and rivers, forests and roads. Far out there, the traveler is already dimming 3i Atlas, reduced to a faint brushstroke sliding toward the outer dark. It leaves behind a data trail and a whisper of dust. It also leaves something quieter, a shape inside us, a map we did not know we were making as we watched. Maps usually show places. This one shows feelings arranged like constellations. Here is wonder, bright and simple, the star that rises first when a new object is named, and the domes open like slow eyes. Near it, all cooler, steady, the light that stays when the first gasp is finished and the work begins. A little farther, there is caution, a lantern with a measured wick, reminding us to check, to repeat, to let doubt walk at our side and point at loose stones on the path. These are not marks on paper. They are habits of the heart, traced night by night as numbers grew into understanding. When the traveler was found, we drew orbits and made plots. But we also learned the quiet strength of pace. We learned to keep our voices low when the sky was generous with hints, and to keep our steps even when the hints went thin. In that rhythm, a root inside us took shape. The root says, move gently, measure twice. Hold your excitement in one hand and your pencil in the other. You can feel that root now, the way you can feel a familiar sidewalk in your feet after midnight. The small tilt at the corner, the smooth stretch by the empty lot, the stone that always makes you lift your shoe a little higher. There is a second kind of map in us as well, one that shows how we belong to one another when we look up. It is drawn in messages that crossed oceans while the traveler crossed sky. A picture from a ridge in Hawaii, a spectrum from a desert in Chile, a light curve from a backyard in Karachi. Each note was a dot. Lines grew between them. Thank you. Got it. Confirmed here. Try this filter. Watching clouds. In a few nights, the lines looked like a web. It held not the object, but us. In the quiet, the web hummed with kindness. The galaxy turns above all this with a grace that does not need our knowing. Spiral arms cradle star nurseries where new suns burn blue, and quiet red dwarfs keep tiny fires for trillions of years. Somewhere, black holes spin, patient and dark, their edges trembling with light that never leaves. Supernova bloom and fade like slow fireworks. Exoplanets circle in calm, some close and hot, some far and cold, some wrapped in gas, some with rock and frost. Our traveler came from a place like that, another neighborhood where gravity wrote long lines in short, where collisions made shards and time made dust. Thinking of that place does not tell us its name, but it warms the world anyway. It says that our rules reach far, and far rules reach here. Inside, another map appears, one that shows fear's true shape. It is smaller than it first seemed. Fear came as a quick shadow when headlines said Interstellar and the word felt sharp. But the shadow softened under patience. The orbit did not threaten. The curve did not dive. The numbers stayed kind. In their steadiness, fear shrank to its proper size, a feeling to note and then place beside the others, not above them. That placement is a kind of cartography too, marking where to stand when strong feelings arrive, so that you can see the view without leaning too close to the edge. There is joy on the map as well, not the loud kind, but the kind that sits in your chest like a warm stone. It showed up when the first hints of ions rose from noise and stayed, when the tail's lines straightened along the antisolar direction like a ruler laid just right, when the light curve hummed a rhythm that matched a spin, when the perihelion plots leveled into a clean shelf and then stepped down with a polite nod. Joy is not an argument. It is a pulse that says the world is real, and we are seeing it as it is. The map's borders are not walls. They are edges where humility lives. Beyond those edges is a country called We Don't Know, and it is larger than the places we have named. It holds questions that will wait for better ears and clearer nights. Why some travelers carry stubborn skins. Why some breathe without bright halos. How deep heat can hide before it rises as a late flare. Whether timing alone can sketch a message that instruments miss. Standing at that border is not defeat. It is a kind of comfort. It means there is still room to walk. You can feel another landmark where memory sits. It keeps the echoes of Amurmur and Borisov like sketches in a book, one slim and puzzling, one bright and classic, and it keeps tonight's visitor beside them, a third drawing that balances the page. Memory is why we knew which questions to ask and which to set aside. It is also why we will ask better next time. The map within is not static. It updates, like star charts that add new points and erase old misplacements with a soft cloth. There is a path that runs right through the middle of the map, and it is called listening. It looks plain. Calibrate, observe, record, share, repeat. But under that simple line is a deeper lane. It leads through rooms where voices stay low, past desks where people say, not seen, with pride, past coffee cups and cold pizza and the clean click of a shutter closing at dawn. That lane is lined with small lamps, a checklist taped to a monitor, a sticky note that says, remember flats, a tiny drawing of a comet on a whiteboard, a file name written so that a stranger will understand it in 10 years. The lamps are not bright. They do not need to be. They lead the way just fine. A small island on the map holds what we might call hope. It is not hope for a miracle in the sky. It is hope for us. Hope that we will keep quiet rooms open. Hope that we will teach and be taught. Hope that we will care for the ears that listen and the eyes that watch. Hope that we will be honest about limits and generous with credit. Hope that we will be ready not with loudness, but with readiness itself. That island is easy to miss when fear is large. Tonight it is easy to see. The map within also has rivers. One is called time. It carries us from first sight to farewell, and it carries each of us from learning to mentoring, from being the one who asks to being the one who answers softly and points at the right figure. Another river is called patience. It moves slower than time and feeds everything green in the landscape. Dry it up, and the map fades to brown and cracks. Keep it full, and small details bloom that no hurry can find. At the edges, the map shades into night again, and the night holds its own shape-scattered meteors, a soft smear of Andromeda low in the east, a planet bright as a pin. Somewhere beyond those, other travelers slide along open curves written ages ago. We will not see them tonight. That is fine. The sky is a long book, and we are careful readers. We never close it. We place a ribbon where we stopped and return when the dark is kind. What did the traveler keep of us? Perhaps nothing. Or perhaps a little warmth clung to its surface, a memory of sunlight after perihelion, a small tilt in its path from all the breaths it took while our mirror stared. That is a sweet thought, our star's signature riding outward on a faint ember. What we keep is less faint. We keep a practice that feels like a promise. We will watch with care. We will share with grace. We will let wonder and caution sit side by side at the same table and pour tea for each other when the night gets long. If you stand by a window now and rest your forehead on cool glass, the sky will give back a simple picture, a few bright points, a smear of streets below, maybe the shape of a tree reaching up with black fingers. Somewhere in that picture is the path you walked inside. You can trace it wonder to awe, awe to patience, patience to understanding, understanding to quiet joy. You could draw it on a napkin and slip it into a pocket. You do not need to. It is yours without ink. The traveler shrinks to the far. Dust settles along its road. The instruments calm and wait for the next name to appear in a quiet email with coordinates and a request. The world turns a slow blue stone in a beam of light, and the rooms that keep the watch grow still. Yet inside that stillness, the map remains lit. It is not loud. It does not insist. It is simply there, ready to be followed the next time a soft glow slides across the dark. And so the night rests with you. The galaxy hums its low song. The horizon holds a thin promise of another dawn. Above, the old stars lean close without moving, and the space between them feels deep and kind. Somewhere, a small question travels on past our circle of warmth, carrying a memory of our sun. Down here, a quiet answer lingers in the chest, easy as breath. Curiosity is our compass. We draw our maps in patience. We walk them in care. The glow fades into the horizon, but in its fading it leaves a fullness in the air, as if something gentle and just beyond reach were waiting to be understood.